Chapter 2306. In the Eastern Sea Divine Prefecture, the Tian clan was used to being domineering. It had always been them bullying others, and no one had ever dared to bully them. When they chased Han Fei, they only regarded Han Fei as a small fry. Now that they were being retaliated by Han Fei, in order to show the prestige of the Tian clan, they were ready to attack Han Fei. In the eyes of the Celestials, once they caught him, killing him or not was another matter. In any case, they had to catch him first. If Han Fei would rather die than surrender, then so be it. Even if Han Fei had a super force behind him, even if he had the support of the God race, the heavenly race was not afraid. Both of them were from great ancient clans, and both of them had God spirits in the past. Both of them had the bloodline of God spirits. So who was afraid of who? Therefore, at this moment, the heavenly race had dispatched many celestial transformation grand late-stage powerhouses within 30,000 years. They did not care about fairness at all. If you want fairness, then you just have to bring out a considerable amount of strength. Fortunately, Han Fei didn't care. In the past, he could not even beat a late-stage celestial transformation cultivator, let alone leave tomorrow's camp. But now, what could be a better whetstone than a group of late-stage celestial transformation realm cultivators? If he could capture a late-stage celestial transformation cultivator, then he would have the capital to ask for resources from the heaven race. At this moment, the 5 experts surrounded him but did not attack. Suddenly, Han Fei stopped. The distance was too far, and the time node he left was almost beyond his senses. If he continued to run, he wouldn't be able to return if he used time reversal. Han Fei, who had stopped running, did not make a move. He glanced at the 5 experts and said in disdain, "5 cowards, you don't even dare to fight 5 against 1. Is the Tian clan full of trash like you? Humph! How arrogant! How could the late stage of the heaven-opening realm be insulted like this by Han Fei?" However, the 5 of them created dozens of clones and charged at Han Fei. Because of the battle experience of the elders in the gods' ruins, they knew that the best way to deal with Han Fei was to fight with clones. However, he had completely underestimated Han Fei's growth in the past few decades. He saw that the dozens of clones were all killed in front of Han Fei in less than a second. Han Fei smiled disdainfully. A doppelganger also depended on who the doppelganger was. If your avatar can reach the late stage of the celestial transformation realm, then I will admit that I am not your opponent. However, don't you know what kind of level you are? How dare you use your clones to suppress me? At this moment, Han Fei's chi and blood were soaring. He didn't look like a heaven-opening state cultivator who hadn't turned into a star yet. At that instant, the rift shuddered all of a sudden. A young man wearing a cloak made of flowing wind walked out from it. When Han Fei saw this person, he suddenly felt a strong sense of dread. He had a feeling that this person was very dangerous, too dangerous. Complete celestial transformation realm. Han Fei narrowed his eyes and stared at this person, not daring to relax. The young man smiled faintly and said, "You guessed right. I thought that I didn't need to do it myself to subdue a small character like you, but I didn't expect you to have so many tricks up your sleeve." Han Fei sneered. "Do you want to try my acrobatic tricks?" The young man smiled faintly. "Of course I have to try. Since you're in such a hurry, come and experience the technique I've specially chosen for you, the Sky Mirror Divine Art." Tut, tut, tut. In the next moment, the silhouettes of young men appeared in the void one after another. And these figures, in Han Fei's eyes, were all his original bodies. Yes, there seemed to be countless clones in the void, but these clones made Han Fei's heart skip a beat. He felt that they were all his original bodies. Han Fei couldn't help but think of the infinity mirror, which was a weird technique similar to the infinity mirror. He could make his original body have countless clones in this way, making him feel that each of them was his original body. The young man smiled contemptuously and said, "Me, this divine art is specially designed for you. It took the heavenly race a long time to find it. Although it's difficult, it's only a matter of time for a heaven-opening state master. I know you have a navigator that can point. Do you want to show me?" At this moment, Han Fei's brain was working fast. There couldn't be an invincible divine art. Even the void theft technique was the same. There must be a way to crack this technique, and the key to cracking it was how to break the principle of this divine art. Since it was a technique, it must be a phenomenon created by the Tao of heaven and earth. Han Fei immediately thought of a countermeasure, which was to use the restrictive spell here to directly break the fundamental power of this great technique. But after using the restrictive spell, he would instantly cut off the ability to reverse time, which meant that he couldn't return to tomorrow's camp instantly. In Han Fei's plan, this escape was just a test. The direction he really wanted to run in was not this direction at all. But Han Fei didn't panic immediately. Even if it was a divine art, it was impossible to erupt the power of his original body 1,000 times at the same time to deal a devastating blow to him. However, the other party didn't give Han Fei time to react. He just showed off his divine art, and then with a thought, he directly let the countless clones surround him. Together with them, the 5 supermasters of the late stage of the star transformation realm also rushed up. At this time, they had already seen through Han Fei's strange power. He could only deprive power 3 times in total. Whose power did he rob? How could he rob it? Even though Han Fei had the blood-killing puppet, it could only stop one person at most. In this case, it was meaningless. At the moment when they attacked, Han Fei sneered. "Goodbye. When I crack this technique, you will be nothing." Suddenly, time flowed around Han Fei, and the next moment, Han Fei had stepped into the river of time. "Running in the river of time in front of me? You are too naive." The next moment, he saw many figures crossing the river of time. Han Fei, who stepped into it, was covered by a violent force in an instant, and his body was penetrated in an instant. This was the first time that Han Fei faced the power of a peak star transformation realm master. When he felt the sword light swept out by that person, his body was directly torn apart. Under the bombardment of a late-stage star transformation realm master, his body exploded on the spot. Gemini in 1. In the crazy battle between the young man and the late-stage star transformation realm masters, Han Fei's figure turned into a stream of light in the river of time, but his figure only appeared for a moment and then disappeared from their sight. The young man frowned slightly. This guy was really difficult to deal with. He didn't expect the other party's means to be so special. That figure just now should be the original body. How could it be a clone? Besides, his intuition told him that he didn't even kill a clone, and the clone was sucked back by the original body. Immediately, the young man said, "Write it down. This guy has other special skills. He can split into 2 figures, one visible and one invisible. These 2 bodies should be the main and secondary body, both being the main body. They have the means to attract each other." Someone was shocked. How can this guy have so many weird skills? Besides, this guy is walking on the great path of time. The young man said lightly, "Don't think about it. If he is from the Temple of Time, then he must be doing some kind of trial now. He failed the trial himself. Will the Temple of Time blame the Heavenly Clan? If he goes back to the camp tomorrow, that Phoenix Star Stream is fake. This guy can reverse time and go back to the camp tomorrow." This young man was a peak star transformation realm master. Even across the river of time, he saw through Han Fei's Gemini divine technique at a glance. In his mind, he even began to think about how to break the Gemini divine technique. It was the first time that Han Fei had reversed time over such a long distance. If he was further away, he wouldn't be able to feel the time node he left. Han Fei thought he would go back to the camp tomorrow. However, he guessed wrong this time. Instead of returning to the camp tomorrow, Han Fei was sucked into the white hole before he entered the speed of light. Han Fei didn't know how he ended up in this white hole after reversing time. When the speed reached the speed of light, there would be 3 weird choices: the star ocean, the white hole, or the stairs. Han Fei never chose them, because he didn't dare to choose them. This time, for some reason, he was sucked into the white hole. The moment he entered, Han Fei felt that he had drilled into a strange channel. There was a weird power in this channel, trying to tear his body apart crazily. Even though Han Fei's physique was amazing, he felt that his body was almost torn apart at that moment. But fortunately, it was only for a moment. When Han Fei felt his body suddenly lightened, he had appeared in front of Feng Xingliu in the array in the courtyard of the camp tomorrow. This Feng Xingliu sucked in a breath of cold air, his expression changing. You were surrounded and killed? Seeing Feng Xingliu, Han Fei realized something. He was back. It seemed that the white hole was a path after all. However, when he looked at his body, he couldn't help but gasp. He was covered in blood and cracks, as if he would break at any time. But Han Fei had no time to think. He squeezed a mass of liquid divine light into his mouth and grabbed Feng Xingliu. Let's go. Chapter 2307. At this moment, it was not the time for Han Fei to think about what a white hole was. When Feng Yu came, he could just ask her directly. Presumably, with the foundation of the Phoenix God Clan and the strength of the Phoenix Feather Star transformation great perfection, it should not be difficult for them to answer this question. Now, he had finally managed to gain more than 30 breaths of time. If he didn't run now, when would he? Originally, Han Fei didn't plan to take Feng Xingliu with him. Although this guy's level was higher than his, the upper limit of his combat ability wasn't high enough. Even if he broke out with his strongest spirit technique, he could not compete against a late-stage celestial transformation cultivator. Although in theory, Han Fei couldn't beat them or outrun them, he had many tricks up his sleeves. He wouldn't be as passive as Feng Xingliu. The reason why he brought Feng Xingliu along was naturally because she was a peerless prodigy of the Phoenix God race after all. If he really fell into a desperate situation, would he really fight on his own? Bringing Phoenix Starstream with him was a variable. Unless he was sure that he could resist the Divine Capital Dynasty safely, or that Feng Xingliu couldn't run away with him, he didn't plan to separate from Feng Xingliu for now. F***CK, is this the Great Tao of Time? At this moment, Han Fei unleashed his full strength and accelerated with the Great Tao of Time. This allowed his speed to reach a little more than 5 times the speed of light. If he went faster, he wouldn't be able to go faster. Feng Xingliu exclaimed, "Are you from the Temple of Time? I heard that your time temple is very mysterious, standing tall above the sea realm. All the great god races can't find you. Are you really that strong?" "Shut up. I'm not." Feng Xingliu didn't care. He had always felt that Han Fei was very mysterious, even though Han Fei later admitted that he was from the West Sea Divine Land. However, with the burst of the Great Tao of Time, even a fool like Feng Xingliu would guess that Han Fei was the heir of the Temple of Time, let alone others. Perhaps it was because the Great Tao of Time was too unique, or perhaps it was because the Temple of Time was too famous, coupled with Han Fei's refusal to reveal his identity. Han Fei's identity was now a mystery. It was reasonable for everyone to suspect him. Today, Han Fei only used the navigator once. So, I wasn't worried about where to go. With a thought, he pointed to a place where he could protect himself. Han Fei didn't think that he could escape from those people just because he was 5 times the speed of light. In fact, as long as the enemy moved at twice the speed of light and knew exactly where he was going, it would only take him less than an hour to get there. Actually, it was not easy to conceal the speed of light. Thus, it was only a matter of time before the celestial race discovered his whereabouts. Han Fei estimated that someone would catch up with him in half an hour at most. Of course, most people couldn't catch up. Even the late stages of the celestial transformation realm, not everyone could reach 5 times the normal speed. For example, outside the God's Ruin, there was only one person who could reach 9 times the speed of light. It could be seen that the pursuit of speed in the heaven opening stage was still difficult. At such a fast speed, it would take him an hour to cover a very long distance. It wasn't that he didn't come across any camps in the wilderness, but there was no need for him to stop. If he stayed, it would be difficult for him to leave again. In fact, in less than half an hour, the young man at the peak of the celestial transformation realm, who had been left behind by Han Fei, had already caught up with him. The young man said, "If you could stall for more time, such as more than 100 minutes, it might not be easy for me to catch up with you. But you only stalled for a little more than 30 minutes. How dare you run away? Do you think there's no one in the celestial race?" Feng Xingliu exclaimed. "Peak of the celestial transformation realm?" Han Fei said, Don't shout. Han Fei didn't stop at all. Ignoring the pressure of this person, he continued to flee. He sneered. What? You're the only one who caught up with me. Do you dare to attack me? The man chuckled. I alone am enough to deal with you. If it weren't for the fact that the young heavenly talents participating in this competition are not here, I wouldn't even need to attack you. With that, a sword light pierced through the endless void, forcing Han Fei to stop. The moment Han Fei stopped, this person turned into countless mirror images, each of which looked like his original body. He didn't think that Han Fei could crack a divine technique in such a short time. Furthermore, although he had arrived a step earlier, the others would not be too slow. This time, the Tian clan had sent out quite a few experts. One of them had reached 9 times the speed of light, and 2 of them had reached 8 times the speed of light. According to the time, the one with 9 times the speed of light would arrive in a few dozen minutes at most. The other 2 would be a little slower, but as long as they could stall Han Fei for a while, it wouldn't take long for them to arrive. This person was very confident. He was at the peak of the celestial transformation realm. Even if this person's means were strange and unpredictable, it shouldn't be a problem for him to suppress them for a while. Feng Xingliu said, Han Fei, can you still run away? I used the Emperor Jade Slip. Han Fei said, don't use the Emperor Jade Slip so easily. Fight. Huh. Han Fei directly got rid of Feng Xingliu and stepped out. If it was just a one-on-one battle, Han Fei wouldn't be afraid of a peak celestial transformation realm expert. This might even be an opportunity. With a thought in Han Fei's mind, Shueisha appeared from the void. Originally, Han Fei was not that kind of rigid person. Even if he had a plan, he wouldn't be in a hurry to show it. Shueisha was a puppet, which didn't conflict with the rules of the major competition of 10,000 years. Just like the Yin family could send a peak celestial transformation realm expert to hunt him. Every rule had a loophole that could be exploited. After releasing Shueisha, the young master sneered, this puppet is not bad. Maybe he's been at the peak for a long time, but after all, he is just a puppet. You want to stop me with a puppet? What do you think a peak celestial transformation realm expert is? Shueisha grabbed the long river of murderous intent and swept away the clones that seemed to be the real body. But to Han Fei's surprise, one of the clones knocked Shueisha back with a punch. Han Fei wasn't surprised by this. He and Shueisha rushed out at the same time and punched at one of the clones. The young man smiled indifferently. Instead of using a sword, he used his fists. Han Fei was blown away by a punch, and then he heard the young man sneer, even if your physique is unparalleled, you don't know that all this will be made up for by your cultivation level. You think you have an unparalleled physique, but you don't know that any peak celestial transformation realm expert is no weaker than you. Han Fei didn't refute. After the God of War told him the path after the celestial transformation realm through the God of War seal, he already knew the way to strengthen his physique in the late stage of the celestial transformation realm. However, as the young man said, the effect of his physique refining would not be made up for by his cultivation level. That was impossible. BM, Han Fei pretended to burst out, and the golden fist marks swept around. However, the countless clones hit him at the same time, and Han Fei was instantly knocked away. But the young master didn't want to give Han Fei a chance. He swung his sword backhandedly, and a Tao that Han Fei had never felt appeared. That was the path of a sword cultivator. Han Fei couldn't name the Tao above Sword Tao. But Han Fei knew that if he was hit by this sword, he would probably be killed. But when Han Fei saw this sword, his eyes also lit up. He shouted sternly, "This place is forbidden." Suddenly, the sky full of figures suddenly froze, and the young master could no longer control these clones. It was also at that moment that there was only a sword shadow left in this world. The sword came out, and the young man's true body was also exposed. Han Fei didn't hesitate at all. He glanced at the sword shadow and forcibly stole the power. When he stole the power of this sword, Han Fei was also shocked. Even with his bearing capacity, his flesh and blood were all exploding. Just how strong was this young man? In order to steal the sword light, Han Fei must quickly exhaust this sword light. Otherwise, he would explode before the other party came back to his senses. Han Fei saw the only figure, the one hidden among the many clones, was his true body. The strong master of the Tian clan was shocked. How is this possible? The rules of this whole world have become invalid at this moment, and my divine skill has also become invalid. My true body can't switch between the clones at will. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei flipped his hand and took out a mirror. Although the young master didn't know what this mirror was for, as soon as this thing appeared, he immediately felt his heart palpitate. At this time, his first thought was to escape, but he was shocked to find that he had forgotten how to burst out faster than light speed. He realized that his speed had been taken away. When his speed was taken away, his first reaction was to bombard Han Fei with his divine soul. But when the mirror in Han Fei's hand shone, the young master was shocked to find that he had been forcibly distorted and appeared in a mirror world where he was surrounded by himself. This person was a little dumbfounded. He subconsciously thought that these were his countless clones. But then he saw a sword light appear in the mirror, which was clearly his own sword light. Puff, puff, puff. In the infinity mirror, the strong master of the Tian clan was attacked by the crisscrossing sword chi. But to Han Fei's surprise, the sword chi did less damage to him than he expected. Han Fei hurriedly replenished the Tao Convergence sword and rushed in. And the physique of a peak star transformation realm expert was indeed amazing. Anyway, after a round of sword tides and the Tao Convergence sword chi, although the strong master of the Tian clan was bruised and bloody, the degree of injury was not serious, which directly shocked Han Fei. Can a peak star transformation realm expert be so strong? Han Fei didn't dare to let this person stay in the infinity mirror for long. The infinity mirror was just an imitation mirror. Even an ordinary heaven opening state expert had the ability to destroy it, let alone a peak star transformation realm expert. Therefore, at the moment when the sword light failed to kill him, Han Fei immediately deprived his consciousness. He didn't give him any chance to fight back. Then, Han Fei used the Tao Convergence sword chi again and pierced into the infinity mirror. He clearly couldn't beat a peak star transformation realm expert, but you just stood still and let me hit you. How could I not kill you? Puff, 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 puff. In the infinity mirror, the body of the strong master of the Tian clan was directly obliterated by the countless Tao Convergence sword chi. Because the Tao Convergence sword chi also had the power to destroy the divine soul. This person's divine soul was also shattered, but he didn't die. After all, the power Han Fei used was not enough to kill a peak star transformation realm expert. Han Fei grabbed a God-sealed spear and inserted it into the infinity mirror. Watching the God-sealed spear infinitely replicate in the infinity mirror, Han Fei stopped with satisfaction. In the distance, Feng Xingliu was dumbfounded. What did he see? Han Fei killed a peak star transformation realm expert. Chapter 2308. This, Feng Xingliu was dumbfounded. Only 2 seconds. Oh no, in less than 2 seconds, Han Fei, who was almost beaten to death, inexplicably reversed the situation. He took out a mirror and casually shone it, and the star transformation realm cultivator disappeared. This reminded him of a terrifying, chaotic spiritual treasure. So, Feng Xingliu pointed at Han Fei for a long time and exclaimed, "Is that Yin-Yang Hao Tian mirror? Are you a descendant of a demon god?" Huh? Han Fei was dumbfounded. Yin-Yang Hao Tian mirror? A descendant of a demon god? I don't understand. Suddenly, Han Fei remembered that the infinity mirror seemed to be based on a mirror named Yin-Yang Hao Tian mirror. It seemed that this Yin-Yang Hao Tian mirror had a powerful background. Han Fei immediately said, "No, wait a moment. This is just a replica." Feng Xingliu immediately said, "Then you are also a descendant of a demon god. Who else can get a replica of the Yin-Yang Hao Tian mirror? No wonder you refused to tell me where you came from. It turns out that you're from the legendary demon god clan." Han Fei was dumbfounded. "I'm just using a mirror, and I've been recognized, and I'm from the Westy Divine Prefecture. It sounds like a noble name." Han Fei frowned. What's wrong with being a descendant of a demon god? Can't a descendant of a demon god appear in the East Ocean Divine Continent? Feng Xingliu said, "No. That's great. I'm just shocked. No wonder you're so powerful before turning into a star. It turns out that you're a descendant of a demon god. I'm glad to hear that. Han Fei was confused, but then he realized that Feng Xingliu was not Feng Qingchen. Feng Xingliu was easy to fool. He said, "Why do you take it for granted that I'm a descendant of a demon god?" Feng Xingliu said matter-of-factly, "The descendants of a demon god are all the descendants of the gods. The orthodox blood of the gods flows in their bodies, which is much more powerful than the awakened bloodline. Then I can understand why you're stronger. I was wondering how someone could be stronger than me when his realm is lower than mine. It doesn't make sense. So that's the reason." Feng Xingliu kept hinting to himself that if Han Fei wasn't a divine prince, he would at most be similar to him. Han Fei pulled Feng Xingliu and continued to run. Although he had caught a peak star transformation realm cultivator, which was extremely valuable. However, he had to sell in the right place. There were still a lot of people chasing after him. Han Fei dragged Feng Xingliu and kept running. Feng Xingliu said, "Why are you less than 30,000 years old when you're a divine prince? There are no more gods in the ocean realm." Han Fei thought of something. "I was born more than 100,000 years later. Of course, I'm not that old." Feng Xingliu's heart skipped a beat. That made sense. It was said that the conditions for the birth of a divine child were very strict. Feng Xingliu couldn't help but feel a little excited. That was the excitement of seeing through Han Fei's identity. He said, "Are there many demonic god descendants? I heard that the ancient fiend celestial clan is the most mysterious force in the West Sea Divine Prefecture. They haven't appeared in the world for 100,000 years. Why did you appear?" Han Fei thought of something. "Don't you dislike studying? How do you know about the ancient fiend god clan and the yin-yang clear sky mirror?" Feng Xingliu immediately said, "Because I've heard a lot of stories. It's said that after the War of Gods, many divine princes created the ancient fiend celestial clan and dominated the ocean realm for 30,000 years. But later, it said that someone in the ocean realm wanted to steal the power of the gods and graft the bloodline of the gods, so they began to plot against the ancient fiend celestial clan. Finally, 100,000 years ago, a great catastrophe broke out in the West Sea Divine Prefecture. No one knows what the ancient fiend celestial clan experienced, but many people died in one night. It was rumored that at that time, the skies of the Western Sea Divine Prefecture were blood red. Great Tao lightning rumbled for 7 days and 7 nights. Countless divine spirit children fell. Since then, the ancient fiend celestial clan has disappeared, completely erased from the world. The yin-yang Hao Tian mirror of the ancient fiend celestial clan has also disappeared since then." When Feng Xingliu spoke, he glanced at Han Fei from time to time and then asked in a low voice, "Hey, what on earth did you experience at that time? Who did this to you?" Han Fei thought to himself, "Who should I ask?" Han Fei didn't expect that the infinity mirror he casually made would have such a background. Besides, the infinity mirror was indeed a replica of the yin-yang Hao Tian mirror. That was undeniable. Han Fei couldn't help but think, 100,000 years ago? 100,000 years ago, the ancient fiend celestial clan was robbed. Coincidentally, 100,000 years ago, Chu Hao got the demon purification gourd and was hunted down. Coincidentally, he found the infinity mirror in Chu Hao's imperial palace, which was a replica of the yin-yang Hao Tian mirror. So, Chu Hao's identity was obvious. Chu Hao must be a divine prince of the ancient fiend celestial clan. Because he got the demon purification gourd, the entire ancient fiend celestial clan was implicated. Not good. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Since Feng Xingliu, the idiot, could tell that the infinity mirror was a replica of the yin-yang Hao Tian mirror, how could the experts of the heavenly clan and even the venerable emperor not know? Once they guessed that he was from the ancient fiend celestial clan like Feng Xingliu, they would definitely associate the demon purification gourd with a replica of the yin-yang Hao Tian mirror. Perhaps Chu Hao had used this mirror back then. They might even be able to recall Chu Hao. If all these were connected by those experts, he would be done for. Not to mention that he wasn't from the ancient fiend celestial clan. Even if he was, no one could protect him. Perhaps eldest senior brother could protect him, but eldest senior brother would only protect him 3 times. Then, if someone guessed that he was related to the demon purification gourd, by then, all the venerable emperors in the entire sea realm would attack him, not to mention those at the peak of the star transformation realm. The sea realm was so big that there would be no place for him. Immediately, Han Fei looked at Feng Xingliu solemnly and said, "Xingliu, do you think we're brothers?" "Huh?" Feng Xingliu was intrigued. "Yes, we are." Feng Xingliu felt that since Han Fei came to save them, the following days had been quite exciting. Besides, although Han Fei was a robber, he was really easy to get along with. There was hot pot and barbecue. All in all, Feng Yu had indeed made a good friend this time. Han Fei said, "Look, we're brothers. We've robbed, fought, and eaten together. Although we're not blood brothers, we're better than blood brothers. From the first time I saw you, I regretted not having met you earlier. I feel that you'll definitely be more promising than Feng Yu in the future." "Really?" When Han Fei said the last sentence, Feng Xingliu felt his blood rush to his head. In his entire life, Han Fei was the only one who said that he would definitely be more promising than Feng Yu in the future. Feng Xingliu had always wanted to surpass Feng Yu, but who would think that he would? In fact, even he didn't think that he would. He was just unwilling to admit defeat. But just now Han Fei said it. Immediately, Feng Xingliu felt his eyes moisten, and his throat became a little sore. He suppressed his voice and said, "Good brother, we're good brothers." Han Fei immediately said, "Brother, to tell you the truth, I'm indeed from the ancient fiend celestial clan. However, this news and a matter of the yin-yang clear sky mirror, only the heavens and the earth know. Only you and I know, and no third person can know about it. I didn't even tell Feng Yu. You can't tell Feng Qingcheng or the elders in my family, or I won't live long." Feng Xingliu was surprised. "Wait, why?" Han Fei heaved a long sigh. "Brother, you know that 100,000 years ago, the ancient fiend celestial clan was harmed by some villains. Those people wanted to absorb the god bloodline of our god son. For this bloodline, less than 10% of our clan was slaughtered. Some fled, and some ran away. Many people in the entire ocean realm have been looking for us for 100,000 years. What if I spill the beans, or the fact that I have a replica of the yin-yang clear sky mirror is leaked?" Feng Xingliu's heart tightened. He said in shock, "Many people must be after your god bloodline." Han Fei looked sad. "That's right. By then, it won't be the heaven-opening state who will attack me, but the venerable emperor. Brother, let me tell you, many venerable sovereigns are not good people. They will do anything to become stronger. Do you want to see your good brother being hunted by venerable emperors? Do you want to see me fall into trouble? Are you willing to see me die without a burial place?" Feng Xingliu immediately shook his head. "No, I won't. I won't tell you. I'm a tight-lipped person. But doesn't the man in your mirror know? Should we?" As Feng Xingliu spoke, he made a gesture of cutting his neck with one finger. Han Fei shook his head. "Don't worry. I'll change his memory later. He's a valuable treasure. He's on the verge of becoming a Dao-proving expert. How much do you think he's worth?" Feng Xingliu hesitated. But Han Fei said, "Brother, do you know why I'm so fond of robbing?" Feng Xingliu asked why. Han Fei sighed. "You may not believe it. The ancient fiend celestial clan is full of divine princes. But as divine princes, do you know that our demand for resources is also very high? We were destroyed by the strong and didn't dare to plunder resources, so we could only rob a little from the east and a little from the west. When you were little, when you waved your hand and rewarded your servants with resources from thousands of kilometers away, I was digging in a mine. When you went to the family treasury to get resources, I was fighting with others for a little bit of resources." Han Fei's face was sometimes melancholy, sometimes agitated, sometimes regretful, and sometimes emotional. When Feng Xingliu heard this, he felt ashamed of himself. No wonder Han Fei was so keen on resources. No wonder he was so good at robbing resources. No wonder he was so stingy and refused to give me more resources. It turned out that he had been like this since he was little. Without hesitation, Feng Xingliu offered to give all the resources to Han Fei. However, Han Fei stopped him. Brother, do you think you're looking down on me? A gentleman loves money and makes it in a proper way. How can I take my brother's resources? Feng Xingliu said solemnly, Since we're brothers, what's mine is yours. If you refuse, I'll be anxious. Han Fei said, Wait a minute, don't panic. Have you forgotten that I still have something valuable? Besides, you can't have any resources when you come to the Divine Capital Dynasty. So just keep it for now. If I need it, I'll naturally mention it to you. Who are we? We're good brothers. Chapter 2309. Just a few seconds after Han Fei said that, another late-stage star transformation realm powerhouse from the Heavenly Clan appeared. But this time, Han Fei definitely wouldn't use the Infinity Mirror. He really couldn't use it now. Feng Xinglu was easy to fool, but no one else was easy to fool. Han Fei didn't know how many people could catch up. In theory, as long as the speed exceeded 8 times the speed of light, they could catch up. However, the time it took for them to catch up was naturally different. The first batch to catch up must have reached 9 times the speed of light. Why didn't Han Fei think there was someone who could reach 10 times the speed of light? Because if the speed reached 10 times the speed of light, then this person would almost be a Dao Vindication cultivator. Even if it was 9 times the speed of light, it was reasonable to say that this person shouldn't be able to reach this level. But the Heavenly Clan also had the bloodline of gods, so it was hard to say. As a powerful clan of the divine East Sea, they couldn't be underestimated. Therefore, even if Han Fei saw these two, he didn't stop but continued to run. And these two, when they saw Han Fei, were a little surprised because they didn't see that person. It shouldn't be. That young master should be the first to catch up, and they passed by a place where there were obviously traces of battle. Why didn't they see that young master? Han Fei didn't stop at all but shouted, How dare you chase me with just 2 people? Do you want to die? Someone responded coldly, Han Fei, no matter what clone you are or where you come from, in the divine EC, you are courting death by fighting against the Heavenly Clan. What's the point of holding on for an hour and a half? How long can you hold on at such a high speed? Han Fei said, I can hold on until I'm exhausted. Why do you care? Han Fei firmly believed that there was a way to get rid of the pursuit of the Heavenly Clan in the direction pointed by the nautical panorama. So he didn't stop at all. And these two didn't make a move. They were waiting for other strong masters to appear and waiting for that young master to appear. However, after half an hour, only 2 late-stage star transformation cultivators caught up, and the young master was not there. An hour later, another person caught up with them. Feng Xingliu said, Do you want me to take action directly? Let's go to the Divine Capital Dynasty. I think you should stop training. This has already exceeded the scope of training. Brother, life and death are terrible. If you often wander on the edge of life and death, you will learn a lot, and your strength will definitely double. Gulp, Feng Xingliu swallowed. Sure enough, Han Fei was still influenced by his childhood. Both of them had climbed through life and death situations. It turned out that the difference between them was just a matter of climbing through life and death situations. At this point, Feng Xingliu had already forgotten about the difference in their bloodlines, and just remembered that he had never been on the brink of death. Seeing that Han Fei was so persistent, Feng Xingliu said, Including this one, there are 5 of us. I don't know how to run anymore. Feng Xinglu really did not know how to fight a battle with such a huge disparity in strength. Anyway, he couldn't beat one of them, so he could either use the venerable Emperor Jade Slip or lie flat on the ground. The reason why Han Fei wasn't afraid was that he had a captive in his hand. Han Fei made up his mind. In order to capture him, the heavenly race sent at least 5 late-stage star condensation cultivators and 1 peak star condensation cultivator. When the 5th person arrived, one of the 4 people who were originally just chasing but not killing suddenly shouted, Go, stop them. Han Fei let go of Feng Xingliu. Take a good look. They dare not kill you. After you pass the life and death situation, your strength will increase greatly. Han Fei didn't want Feng Xingliu to leave with the venerable Emperor Jade Slip because he didn't think it was necessary. His identity was unknown, so it was fine if the heavenly race attacked him. However, Feng Xingliu was a core disciple of the Phoenix God race. According to Feng Qingsheng, the Phoenix god race's status in the South Sea Divine Continent was similar to that of the heavenly race, so they were not afraid of the heavenly race at all. If the heavenly race attacked Feng Xingliu, it would be no problem for them to teach him a lesson. But if they dared to kill Feng Xingliu, it would be pure provocation. Since he was sure that they probably wouldn't kill him, Han Fei didn't mind helping Feng Xingliu. Feng Xingliu exclaimed, "I can't beat them." Han Fei said, "Don't worry. Just do your best. They don't dare to do anything to you. You are a rare heavenly talent of the divine Phoenix god race. Don't you want to surpass Feng Yu? Believe in yourself. You have this chance. Attack with all your strength." Flames surged around Feng Xingliu's body, and waves of fire surged. "Don't be afraid. After passing the life and death situation, you can surpass Feng Yu." Feng Xingliu thought. Han Fei's words made him completely believe in Han Fei. He felt that this was a chance for him to grow. Yes, he was a descendant of the main bloodline of the Phoenix god race. Why did these people dare to kill him? Kill. Hula. Feng Xingliu used a big move at the beginning. With a long sword in hand, the fire phoenix soared into the sky and threw a person at him. With a thought in Han Fei's mind, Shueisha chased after one of them. Han Fei sneered. 2 out of the 5 are gone. How can the 3 of you catch me? However, the 3 didn't attack. They looked at Feng Xingliu indifferently. Han Fei, you may have many tricks up your sleeves, but this kid from the Phoenix god race is still a greenhorn. He's very inexperienced in all aspects, and his battle techniques are also quite rusty. He's relying on his own foundation to support himself. How long do you think he can last? Han Fei grinned. A bunch of arrogant guys. You'll never understand. The most primitive state of a battle is recklessness. The 3 looked at each other. Although they would wait for someone else to defeat Feng Xingliu, they wouldn't just sit and watch Han Fei. This person was mysterious and had many tricks up his sleeves. If they gave him a chance, he might come up with some tricks. However, these 3 didn't attack in person but summoned a large number of clones. Obviously, they hadn't learned any divine skills, so they could only attack Han Fei in the most primitive way. However, if it was just his doppelgangers, Han Fei's power would also be extraordinary. If there were only 10 or 20 doppelgangers, they might be able to suppress Han Fei temporarily, but this number of doppelgangers could only suppress Han Fei for 1 or 2 seconds at most. Han Fei didn't even need to use the Great Tao among his clones. He only needed to steal power and use it to defend himself. 2 seconds later, this group of clones was wiped out by Han Fei. Han Fei today was no longer the same Han Fei who was chased by the 3 top experts of the Heavenly Clan. The 3 realized that their clones weren't very useful anymore. This kid already had the combat power to resist the late stage of the heavenly creation state. They immediately split a large portion of their strength into doppelgangers and attacked their main bodies together. This wasn't the god's ruin, so they didn't think there would be any special situation like there. And because they hadn't fought Han Fei face to face, they didn't actually feel it. In the blink of an eye, 9 clones of equal strength appeared, surrounded Han Fei, and attacked at the same time. They thought that even though Han Fei was special, he could control at most 6 at once. They thought that with 9 clones, they couldn't take down Han Fei. They were thinking the same thing as the 3 people who chased Han Fei in the God's Ruin. The difference was that the 3 of them just treated Han Fei as a rogue cultivator with a lot of opportunities. But now, these people treated Han Fei as a cultivator of the Temple of Time. So they were a little more cautious now, but they also didn't think Han Fei could really stop them. In fact, after they attacked, Han Fei didn't use the Eye of Chaos to disturb their clones. It wasn't that Han Fei didn't want to use it, but that he didn't dare to call out the Emperor Sparrow. In the Divine Capital Dynasty, once the information about the Emperor Sparrow and the Demon Purification Pot was exposed, he might die without a burial place. On the other side, Feng Xingliu was sent flying, and the void shook many times. This guy's body cracked, and the Fire Phoenix divine skill had already been activated. In just 2 seconds, he was forced to use his divine skill. But Han Fei didn't care and took out the nautical panorama in his hand. The next moment, someone shouted, "Retreat!" Of course, they knew that the nautical panorama had the ability to point directly at the real body. Although they didn't think it was useful, because even if some of the power of the real body was taken away, their clones were still there. What could Han Fei do to them? Besides, Han Fei's nautical panorama could only point at one person at a time. How could he find the real bodies of all of them? Among these 3 people, one of them fell into chaos for no reason. But there were 3 real bodies and 6 clones here. How could they allow Han Fei to attack that person? 3 clones stepped forward together and blocked Han Fei's way. However, the body of the guy who fell into chaos was suddenly affected. Oh no, it's the real body that he can't see. Han Fei frowned. The Gemini divine skill was seen through. These people really had sharp eyes. Since it was seen through, Han Fei immediately used Gemini as one and grabbed the body of the strong heavenly expert and flew back. At the same time, he reached out and grabbed the head of the person in his hand. The clone that chased after him shouted, "Boy, even if my real body is asleep, you can't kill me." Humph! The next moment, Han Fei's hand directly penetrated the head of his real body. As he suddenly pulled, the soul of this person was directly pulled out by Han Fei. Hiss! Oh no, he's also a soul cultivator. Han Fei pulled out his soul and rushed to the Phoenix star stream while erasing it with the sun god, shouting, "Come on! Now that you have 2 clones, the soul strength of your real body is definitely not strong enough. At this time, even if I can't destroy your main soul, I can still seriously injure you so that you will never be able to reach the peak again in this life. Come on, do it." At this time, the strong heavenly expert who had already pierced through the Fire Phoenix divine skill split into 3 and rushed at Han Fei at the same time. Then, the clone that was held by Han Fei shouted, "Idiot, the heavenly clan has the spring of life. How can we be seriously injured? Why won't the clan reward us?" Han Fei frowned. Yes, Chu Hao asked him to find the spring of life, which was a divine object that could regenerate flesh and bones and bring the dead back to life. This person was not afraid that Han Fei would destroy his soul. Around Han Fei, the 11 super strong masters who had joined forces with their clones attacked at the same time. Gravity, storm, soul attack, and many kinds of power of laws bombarded him at the same time. World of Law. A golden body suddenly appeared, and Han Fei forcibly pushed his strength up to resist the storm-like bombardment. At the same time, he shouted, "Explode!" At that moment, Han Fei activated all his strength and stuffed the infinity water into the mouth of this person, causing him to explode. Unfortunately, the infinity water, an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure, could no longer penetrate a late-stage star transformation cultivator. His body swelled and cracked, but he didn't explode. Bam! The power of the sun, God, shook the soul of this person. The void lines were stealing his vitality and divine soul. Unfortunately, there was not enough time. Facing the siege of so many people, Han Fei couldn't hold on any longer. At this moment, he heard a chuckle in his ear. Then, a calm and gentle voice sounded. "Oh, is this the heavenly clan? So many people are bullying 2 people. How shameless." Chapter 23:10. Who is it? On Han Fei's side, the battle was extremely fierce. Because Han Fei's physique was extraordinary, his divine soul was extremely powerful, and his methods were extremely special, they didn't dare to relax at all. The newcomer was getting closer and closer. When they all noticed her, they saw a beautiful woman about 65 meters tall in a half-length dress standing 10,000 kilometers away. When everyone saw this girl, they couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. The girl was slender and elegant. When she didn't move, she looked gentle and gentle. There was a faint smile on her face, gentle and graceful. There was no flirtatiousness in her eyes, no cuteness, only endless gentleness. Her jade-like fingers held a foot-long dagger in her hands. She looked like a 15-year-old girl next door who hadn't yet remembered. On the whole, this girl gave everyone a feeling of gentleness and beauty. Inexplicably, there was a special feeling of closeness to her. However, Everyone immediately realized that this girl was definitely not as simple as she seemed. How could she pass through the boundless wilderness and appear here? How could she be such a pure and beautiful girl? She was so innocent, as if she had never seen the vicissitudes of life. How could such a person become a star transformation overlord? Girl, the heavenly race is busy. Leave quickly. However, the girl gently raised the foot-long dagger in her hand, and a knife mark appeared in front of the person who spoke. When everyone's eyes fell on the knife mark, the girl disappeared, leaving only an afterimage leaping in the void. But she was already gone. Watch out. The heavenly race overlord had just blocked the knife light in front of him. But as soon as he released the light, the force field around him became chaotic. But even so, a half-arc lit up, not controlled by the force field, and directly cut into the heavenly race overlord's back. Puff! The heavenly race overlord was cut in half by the half-arc. Unfortunately, the girl didn't use her full strength, or maybe she wasn't that strong, so she couldn't kill him with one blow. In fact, Han Fei felt that this was reasonable, because even he couldn't kill a late-stage star transformation overlord with one blow, even if it was just a clone. This girl could cut him in half with one blow, which was already very powerful. In terms of strength, she was definitely stronger than Fengxing Liu. At this moment, Fengxing Liu finally had a chance to catch his breath, because the people who beat him up had come to kill Han Fei. Although he only lasted for 3 breaths under the might of the late-stage celestial transformation realm, only he himself understood the feeling. There was no time to deal with the violent storm. Even if he used his divine techniques, he would still be pierced through, unable to deal with it. But as Han Fei said, he was in a quagmire, but he did not suffer a fatal blow, which inexplicably boosted his confidence. At this moment, seeing that someone was helping him, he immediately shouted, "Fire Phoenix Heaven's Wings!" However, Fengxing Liu used the void as a slingshot and condensed a fiery feather. She drew the bow and shot it out, like a ferocious phoenix descending to the world, setting the universe ablaze. After that strike, Fengxing Liu felt like he was crippled. All of his strength had been used up, but even Han Fei and the girl couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. This strike was enough to resist a late-stage star transformation cultivator. This made them realize that the Phoenix Starstream's potential was much higher than they had imagined. When Fengxing Liu attacked, blade auras flashed around Han Fei, but these blade auras seemed to be directly imprinted on the divine souls of those heavenly race overlords, making it difficult to dodge. It seemed that space was no obstacle to the blade auras that burst out of her. Shadowless blade? Han Fei felt that this technique was very similar to Xia Xiaochan's shadowless blade, but it was much more brilliant than the shadowless blade. This blade didn't involve space, and it seemed to also avoid time. It was as if she directly attacked and then hit. There was no third possibility between attacking and hitting. Unhindered, a word suddenly came to Han Fei's mind. The unhindered sword liquid that he had once used had a similar feeling. But now wasn't the time for Han Fei to think about this. Since someone had helped him, he was not weak in the first place, so he could break the siege of these people. Han Fei raised his hand, and the Tao Convergence sword burst out. Many kinds of Taoist auras intertwined and mixed. At this moment, he was at the peak of his power, so he could completely beat back one person. The sacrificing punch erupted, and the god-slaying gloves strengthened him. A punch pierced through the stars. One person took this punch and fell into a struggle. Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the Taoist patterns of heaven and earth gathered into a spear. The god-sealing spear was used as a blocking tool, instantly suppressing one person. The girl was shocked. At this moment, Han Fei burst out 3 attacks and repelled 3 clones of the late stage of the heaven opening realm. This person was much stronger than she thought. She guessed that if it weren't for the fact that there were too many people besieging him and they were too strong, she might not have needed to take action at all. Han Fei shouted in a low voice, "Girl, can you help me hold them off for a moment?" "Okay." A soft voice sounded, and then a melodious melody sounded. A big black bone fan drew a semicircle in the sky, separating Han Fei from these people. At that moment, Han Fei's golden body seemed to burst out infinite power, and his yang spirit penetrated his body and drilled straight into the soul of the person in his hand. Han Fei was now running the great Tao to the limit, plus the god-slaying gloves, the power of the heavenly law, the god prayer beads, and the law of heaven and earth. The power he carried in his hand at this moment exceeded 30 million waves. The double power of his body and soul was superimposed, pouring crazily into this strong person who had already separated into two powerful clones. Bang! Han Fei's law of heaven and earth put his hands together, and this person's body was completely crushed, as was his soul. If this person's strength was at its peak, Han Fei had no chance of winning, and he couldn't even shake the other party's soul. But now he had separated into two powerful clones, and his main body had fallen into a deep sleep, and his soul was lost. Han Fei was not a kind person. Just now, the infinity water self-explosion failed to completely penetrate this person, so he would use all his strength to obliterate him. Han Fei, how dare you? Screw the heavenly race, why wouldn't I dare? Die. Han Fei felt a huge force resisting his hands. He immediately turned into a black mist. He had never used the Gemini divine technique's black mist devouring power. But at this moment, he couldn't care so much. He only had one breath of time. The girl couldn't resist the siege of so many people. If it weren't for the strange fan, she would have already been defeated. At this moment, the world suddenly lost its light. Those heavenly race experts were dealing with Han Fei and the girl, and there was another person who was resisting the Fire Phoenix divine technique. However, a sword light appeared out of nowhere. The sword was like a dragon, traversing the 9 heavens, and its speed was comparable to the peak of the Emperor Realm. Eastern Sword Pavilion? A heavenly race expert immediately called out the origin of the sword, and immediately sent 2 people to block the sword. Then they saw a handsome young sword cultivator standing quietly in the distance, a long sword in front of him. The heavenly race expert said, "Why is the Eastern Sword Pavilion interfering in the heavenly race's affairs?" The sword cultivator said indifferently, "To be fair, die." The golden body let out a heaven-shaking roar, and the body and soul of the heavenly race expert in his hands were completely annihilated. However, there were no traces of the great Tao being annihilated. The other party had a clone. For a heaven-opening realm expert, it was no longer as simple as rebirth from a drop of blood. The clone also contained the main body's soul and blood. Although Han Fei killed the main body, the other party still had a chance to live. The relationship between the main body and the clone was different from the relationship between the main body and the external incarnation. The external incarnation was equivalent to creating another self. When a main body was annihilated, the external incarnation was still the main body. But the clone was only a part of the power that the main body temporarily diverted. It only carried the main body's power, but did not carry the main body's yang spirit, Yin's soul, memories, etc. If the main body died, they could immediately return and rebuild the main body. But if the main body died for a long time and was annihilated in the world, no matter how long they could last, they would eventually be annihilated and could not be reborn. Han Fei stretched out his hand, and time intertwined. The clone of the heavenly race expert was shocked, thinking that Han Fei was going to use the great Tao of time to directly send the dead body to another time. Once Han Fei succeeded, it was equivalent to him really dying. It was not easy for him to reach the late stage of the star transformation realm. How could he be willing? At that time, his identity dissipated and he tried to return to his main body. He was thinking that Han Fei would not kill him. Han Fei had captured so many heavenly talents, but he didn't kill them. He just used them to exchange for resources. Why would he kill him? But he didn't know that Han Fei was waiting for this moment. When his clone dissipated and was about to return, Han Fei thought of something. Steal power, steal vitality, steal consciousness. Han Fei directly reduced the heavenly race expert's combat power to the lowest level. He activated the great Tao crazily, and a large area of his body exploded, blood flowing. But at this moment, Han Fei faced the strongest combat power in history. He put his hands together again. The power of the Yang spirit attacked with all his strength. Stop! How dare you? Han Fei, you're courting death. Rumble, at that moment, a blood-colored crack spanned millions of miles, and a blood-colored rain curtain fell between heaven and earth. This was the first time that Han Fei had really killed a heavenly race expert in the late stage of the star transformation realm. At the late stage of the star transformation realm, it was too difficult to kill. If Han Fei hadn't destroyed the heavenly race expert's body first, he would have been unable to kill a heavenly race expert in the late stage of the star transformation realm. At this moment, Feng Xingliu flew over. The girl appeared again, and so did Shuaisha. The opponent's clones quickly merged into the main body. All of a sudden, the situation became 5-4, and the heavenly race seemed to have no chance. Feng Xingliu said in shock, "Did you really kill him?" The girl glanced at Han Fei, her eyes full of astonishment, and then she said, "You're hurt quite badly." The sword cultivator of the Eastern Sword Pavilion also understood. The sword in front of him kept humming, thinking this person is so strong. Chapter 23:11. Because of the two unknown helpers, Han Fei thought they were the reason why the nautical panorama pointed here. So, Han Fei didn't have to kill this person, because he could ask for a lot of resources from the heavenly races with him. But he still killed him, considering that he needed sacrifices to obtain the power of the god of war. This person was a good sacrifice. Also, this was the only way to increase the wealth of the person in the infinity mirror. Woo! At this moment, the void behind Han Fei and the others trembled, and a giant ship jumped over from the void. This giant ship was 100,000 meters long, 16,000 meters wide, and 18,000 meters above the water. It was a moving city. It was the first time that Han Fei had seen such a huge ship in the wilderness. The moment he saw the ship, he felt an inexplicable gaze that made him tremble. Emperor level, Han Fei was shocked. He had seen more than one emperor. Except for his first senior brother, this one was the scariest one to him. The gentle and beautiful girl said, "This is the crossing, the #1 independent cultivator ship in the divine land of the East Ocean. The East Ocean is so big that I can cross it." Seeing Han Fei's confusion, the girl was slightly surprised. "You've never heard of it?" Han Fei shook his head. He was like a newbie who had just come out of the mountains and knew nothing about the outside world. The girl smiled, revealing a pair of shallow dimples. Her eyes were slightly curved, and she was so sweet that she didn't look like a human at all. Her every frown and every smile was alluring. But she wasn't sexy at all. Slurp, Feng Xingliu's saliva almost dripped out his mouth. Han Fei even heard his heart pounding violently. It was obvious that this guy had been charmed by this girl and probably fell in love at first sight. Han Fei, on the other hand, focused his attention on the girl's dagger. He couldn't help but suspect that the dagger was an upgraded version of the Shadowless Blade. Could this guy be? The girl seemed to be used to people like Feng Xingliu, so she didn't mind. She said casually, "The crossing, the #1 independent cultivator ship in the East Ocean, is controlled by the South Emperor. It travels among the major forces and on many treasure lands. The crossing welcomes all independent cultivators. It's known as the paradise for independent cultivators. But at the same time, it did not object to the experts of the major forces staying here. So far, no one had dared to kill anyone on the crossing, not even venerable sovereigns. You were lucky to be on the Traverser's route." Han Fei asked casually, "Where are you going?" The girl replied, "The Divine Capital Dynasty." Han Fei looked back, but the gaze just now had disappeared. So he nodded at Feng Xingliu and said, "Get on." At this time, the celestial powerhouses all had ugly expressions. In such a vast wilderness, why did they have to encounter the Traverser? One of them shouted, "Han Fei, even if you can escape today, how can you leave the Divine Capital Dynasty?" Han Fei sneered, "It's none of your business whether I can leave or not." "Oh, that's right. Remember to come find me later. Bring along the resources within 2 million kilometers." The man sneered, "Who do you think you are?" Crash. Han Fei casually threw out a head, which was the super expert at the peak of the star transformation realm sealed in the infinity mirror. Just now, Han Fei attacked the infinity mirror twice. Because this person's consciousness was stolen, his body was smashed and fell apart. Then he was fixed by the God-sealing spear and couldn't reassemble or do anything. He was still lying in the infinity mirror in a daze. Han Fei said, "Remember, you only have 1 month. If you don't get the resources in 1 month, you won't have a chance to see this guy again." Young master? The 4 of them were shocked. No wonder they didn't see this person from beginning to end. It turned out that he had been captured by Han Fei. However, how could Han Fei have the strength to capture a peak star transformation realm expert? A powerhouse at the edge of the Tao-proving realm should be able to crush Han Fei easily, right? At this moment, they didn't have time to think. The crossing was about to arrive. These people reluctantly retreated and disappeared into the void. Then, Han Fei's avatar disappeared, and a mass of flesh and blood fell from the sky. Han Fei stuffed the expert of the celestial race into the origin sea while he was still warm. In the end, he had to exclaim that a peak star transformation realm expert was really strong. If it were an ordinary person, he would have crushed them into dust or energy, but this person still had a human form. From this, it could be seen that what the god of war said about the path after turning into a star was indeed extraordinary. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder what would happen if he finished that path. At this moment, Han Fei slightly cupped his hands at the girl and then looked at the sword cultivator. "Thank you for your help. My name is Han Fei, an independent cultivator." Slurp, Feng Xingliu looked at the girl with a smile. "Nice to meet you, girl. My name is Feng Xingliu Feng. I'm an independent cultivator." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "Do you think I don't know who you are? Now that you're involved, I'm just a rogue cultivator. It's like I'm bragging." The girl smiled faintly. "Me? I know the Phoenix Divine race, but I really don't know this one." The girl looked at Han Fei and smiled. "I'm Wu Shuang from the City of Terror. Nice to meet you, fellow cultivators." Wu Shuang. Han Fei thought to himself that the name did not match her appearance. Han Fei felt that the name Gentle was more suitable for a gentle and beautiful girl like her. On the other side, the sword cultivator looked at Han Fei. "I'm Wang Beichen for the Eastern Sword Pavilion. What kind of sword move was that finger of yours just now?" Han Fei realized that this guy was attracted by his swordsmanship. Han Fei immediately replied with a smile, "It's my own creation, the Tao Convergence Sword." Wang Beichun slightly nodded, but his expression didn't change much. "Very strong. Let's have a fight when we're free." Han Fei nodded. "Okay." Han Fei was covered in blood, cracked, and exhausted. In their eyes, he was heavily wounded. Feng Xingliu was the same. He was in an even worse state than Han Fei. Han Fei could fight a cultivator in the late stage of the star transformation realm, but Feng Xingliu was too reckless. He had been beaten up for 3 seconds. Han Fei casually gave Feng Xingliu a ball of liquid divine light and stuffed one into his mouth. It would be too eye-catching to use the heavenly awakening divine technique, but it wouldn't attract attention with the liquid divine light. Everyone would only think that it was some kind of healing medicine, but they wouldn't think that it was some kind of mystical technique. It was the first time that Feng Xingliu had been so heavily wounded. As soon as the liquid divine light entered his mouth, he shivered and felt that his limbs and bones were stretched out. The pain all over his body suddenly lightened, and his wounds were healing at a visible speed. He was about to ask what it was, but Han Fei slightly shook his head. He understood and didn't ask again. Han Fei looked at Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen. "Han Fei owes you two a favor. Let me treat you to dinner first." "Dinner?" Feng Xingliu immediately said. Okay. We've been running for so long and are so tired. It's time to take a rest." On the crossing, a casual repair ship. In fact, not many people noticed the battle on Han Fei's side. Heaven-opening realm cultivators could notice the changes in the weather, but ordinary heaven-opening realm cultivators couldn't watch the battle on Han Fei's side from afar. However, most people knew that something big had happened up ahead. It was no longer a scene caused by the death of an ordinary heaven-opening realm cultivator. Unfortunately, when When the crossing passed by the battlefield, many people didn't see it all. Many people gathered by the side of the ship, collecting the spiritual rain after the destruction of the Great Path. The crossing didn't come for nothing. Sea-opening realm cultivators and heaven-opening realm cultivators charged different prices for every day they stayed on the ship. The payment methods were also different. After all, individual cultivators sometimes didn't know what they had. When they paid for the ship, they calculated that the resources for a sea-opening realm cultivator to stay on the crossing for a day were about 100 kilometers. Moreover, according to their strength, different resources would be charged, but the lowest limit was 50 kilometers. This was already a very small amount of resources. Why was it so small? It was said that the controller of the crossing, the South Emperor, had become an emperor step by step from an independent cultivator. He knew how difficult it was for an independent cultivator to grow up, so he didn't take their resources. However, if a heaven-opening realm cultivator wanted to stay on the ship for a day, the basic price was 1,000 kilometers a day. That was equivalent to paying 10,000 kilometers of resources in 100 days. That was equivalent to paying 10,000 kilometers of resources in 10,000 days. More directly, in 27 years, they had to pay all the resources a sea-opening realm cultivator could get. For a sea-opening realm cultivator, this was naturally a huge number. But for a heaven-opening realm cultivator, this amount of resources was actually not much. Because of this, there were a lot of heaven-opening realm cultivators on the crossing. There were nearly 10,000 of them staying on the ship in just a day. Moreover, South Deity would charge even more for people from special factions. Anyone recognized as a big force could collect 10,000 kilometers of resources a day. Because you came from a big force, I'm going to rip you off. If you don't want to be ripped off, then get out of here. Han Fei and the others were treated like this after boarding the ship. A sea-opening realm cultivator collected resources from them. According to the judgment of the crossing, you have to pay 10,000 kilometers of resources a day. How long do you need to pay? Han Fei smiled faintly. How long will it take to reach the divine capital dynasty? The attendant said, the crossing won't move very fast, so it will take another year and 8 months to reach the divine capital dynasty. Han Fei's heart did a flip. This place was only 2 light years away from the divine capital dynasty. In that case, the crossing was indeed not fast. Han Fei was sure that the crossing would only sail freely on the sea for a while after jumping for a while. It couldn't operate at full power. Therefore, this feeling was like the experience of a cruise in a different world. Han Fei looked at the man and was silent for a moment. Would you believe me if I said, I'm an independent cultivator? The attendant shook his head with a smile, thinking, stop bragging. Han Fei's name is already on the crossing. You challenge the heavenly clans, rob them, and capture them in exchange for resources. You say you're an independent cultivator, but do you think I'm a sea pig? Han Fei shrugged helplessly and paid 2 portions of resources. We'll pay the daytime resources first. The attendant wasn't surprised. He just smiled and gave Han Fei and Feng Xingliu a token with the word South engraved on it. Feng Xingliu didn't say anything. He seemed to be used to money. He thought to himself, why should I compete with my brother to pay such a small amount of money? But Feng Xingliu didn't know that small favors were the easiest to buy people's hearts. Chapter 23:12. On the crossing, Han Fei booked a comfortable and spacious room with a courtyard view, a running lotus pond, and a room decorated with low-level demonic plants. Feng Qingcheng was listening to Feng Xingliu telling her what had happened during this period, which was slightly exaggerated. He fought a peak star transformation realm cultivator and killed a peak star transformation realm cultivator. Feng Qingcheng glanced at Han Fei in surprise and then heard Feng Xingliu bragging. In fact, I'm not bad. I fought a peak star transformation realm cultivator for 3,000 rounds. Although he was heavily wounded, he wasn't much better. Han Fei couldn't bear it anymore and said, yes, he wasn't much better. His hand just hurt. Pucci. Wu Shuang couldn't help but smile. Feng Qingcheng was speechless, wondering when Feng Xingliu would change his habit of bragging. Feng Xingliu was about to burst into anger, but his heart softened when he saw Wu Shuang's beautiful smile. In the room, Han Fei cleared a piece of land and set up a hot pot and a barbecue grill. Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen were a little confused by this. In the next moment, Han Fei took out a bunch of ordinary prawns, clams, sea cucumbers, sea urchins, mantis shrimp, and so on. Han Fei said, "Feng Xingliu, you barbecue." Then, Han Fei smiled at Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen. "Please wait a moment." Wang Beichen slightly frowned. How can a cultivator be greedy? At this moment, Feng Xingliu and Feng Qingsheng gave him a mysterious and slightly smug look. As soon as the oil boiled, the onions, ginger, garlic, and chili flew out. Chilla, in an instant, the aroma spread, and Wu Shuang's eyes lit up. She had already felt hungry before the meat was in the pot, which was something she had never experienced before. Even Wang Beichen had never felt such a wonderful taste. When the crab meat, dragon slices, lobster meat, and fish face meat were put into the pot made a bubbling sound, and then Han Fei casually squeezed out the Dao patterns, which wandered on the tender meat in the pot. This was a new cooking technique that Han Fei had figured out. He directly coated the ingredients evenly with the broth. In this way, the broth was just right, and the taste was just right. As he chewed, his lips and teeth could taste the flavor of the ingredients. The taste of the hot pot made this way was several times better than the previous hot pot. Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen had never seen such a dazzling array when cooking. Although it was strange, this Han Fei seemed to be a very particular person. Hot pot and barbecue were ready in a moment. Han Fei took out the wine gourd and forged 5 delicate glasses. He gently poured the wine, and the fragrance of the wine filled the room. The taste of the Enlightenment wine was equally extraordinary. After the cups were distributed to everyone, Han Fei said with a smile, "Thank you for your help just now. Brother North Star, your path of the sword is truly amazing. I've seen a few powerful sword cultivators in the past, but there are only 2 who have such a path." Wang Beichen looked at Han Fei. "Oh, who is it?" Sword cultivators had always been persistent about sword Dao. He recognized Han Fei's strength, so he made friends with Han Fei, and he trusted Han Fei's judgment. With Han Fei's strength, he had to believe it. Wu Shuang was also quite curious. Wang Beichen was a peerless heavenly talent of the Eastern Sword Pavilion. How many people could compare with him in Sword Dao? Han Fei smiled faintly. Speaking of which, they're actually not very strong. One of them is called Tanggu, who is only in the Pioneer Sea realm. Unfortunately, I don't know where he is now. The other is called Wang Yijian, who has just entered the Sky Opening realm. His sword Dao is so amazing that no one in the same realm can defeat him. This person is really a genius in sword Dao. Wang Beichen couldn't help but say, "Wang Yijian, he is a heavenly talent who was just accepted by the Eastern Sword Pavilion 100 years ago. This person's sword Dao is really powerful and rare. If he weren't in seclusion, he would have a place in this 10,000-year competition." "Oh, really? He went to the Eastern Sword Pavilion?" Han Fei didn't expect Wang Beichen to know Wang Yijian, but at least he got news of an old friend from him, which made him feel relieved. It seemed that Senior Sword God and Wang Yijian were doing well. I've known him for more than 500 years. He once said that he would go to the Eastern Sword Pavilion. I didn't expect that he would really go there. Seeing that Han Fei and Wang Yijian knew each other, Wang Beichen felt a little closer. After saying that, Han Fei looked at Wu Shuang and smiled. "Miss Wu Shuang, speaking of which, when I met Wang Yijian and the others, one of them said that he envied the Terror City. That person's name is Kong Shun. It's a pity that he split open the sky a long time ago, so he shouldn't be too well known." As expected, Wu Shuang shook his head slightly. He did not know this person. Han Fei's guess was right. Unparalleled talent was unparalleled, and Kong Shun had been a heavenly talent for tens of thousands of years. He was definitely not a heavenly talent, but his strength must have improved further, and now he should also be on the path of star condensation. After laughing, Han Fei said, "I can understand why Brother Beichen took action. I've also dabbled in swordsmanship a little. However, I didn't expect Miss Wu Shuang to make a move." Wu Shuang smiled faintly and said, "The heavenly race has been dominating for a long time, and they're always at odds with our terror city. Since ancient times, our two sides have never been on good terms. Therefore, it was only natural for me to make a move. May I know who you are, fellow Taoist Han Fei? 5 months ago, the news of your battle against the heavenly race has been spread on the crossing." Seeing that Han Fei was a little surprised, Wu Shuang said softly, "The crossing moves slowly, but there are always people coming and going. Your name, Han Fei, has already spread on the crossing." Feng Xingliu's eyes immediately lit up. "What about me? What about me?" Wu Shuang narrowed her eyes and smiled. "Feng Xingliu, you've become famous. You call yourself the heavenly talent of the South Sea Divine Prefecture, but you call yourself the heavenly talent of the East Sea Divine Prefecture. Everyone wants to see a winner between you." Feng Xingliu slightly raised his head and couldn't help but sneer. "Of course it's me. I'm just a heavenly race. I don't deserve to be in the spotlight." Han Fei and Feng Qingqing chose to ignore Feng Xingliu's words at the same time. "Have you forgotten who hit you? You were almost blown to pieces by the enemy, and you still have the face to brag?" Han Fei said, "Let's eat. Let's talk while we eat." Unable to resist Han Fei's enthusiasm, Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen were also a little curious about the hot pot and barbecue. After the first bite, Wu Shuang's smiling face was immediately filled with shock. Although she soon returned to normal, she soon picked up a garlic prawn. Han Fei couldn't help but secretly look at Wu Shuang, only to be slightly disappointed. It seemed that she didn't know it, and it was the first time in her life that she had tasted it. Wang Beichen's expression was much simpler after a bite of the hot pot. He was only stunned for a moment and then stopped eating. Han Fei asked, "Brother Beichen, why don't you eat? Is it not to your taste?" Wang Beichen shook his head and said simply, "It's too delicious. I'm easily distracted." Han Fei was speechless. Are all sword cultivators like this? It shouldn't be. Some sword cultivators are not. Maybe it's because heavenly talents like Wang Beichen are too harsh on themselves. During the meal, Wu Shuang asked tentatively, "Fellow Taoist Han Fei, you challenged the heavenly race. May I know which force you are from?" Han Fei asked, "Would you believe me if I said I'm an independent cultivator?" Wu Shuang nodded. "It's best if you are an independent cultivator. Our city of terror welcomes talents like Brother Han. Brother Han, if you come, we can offer you ultra-quality divine weapons and supreme divine techniques." Han Fei laughed. "I'm used to being undisciplined. I can go and have some fun when I'm free. By the way, Ms. Wu Shuang seems to have reached the late stage of the star transformation realm, right?" Wu Shuang nodded slightly. "Although I'm at the late stage of the star transformation realm, it's still not stable yet." Han Fei thought to himself, if Wu Shuang is Xia Xiaochan, her growth is 2F*King fast. How many years has it been? She's already at the late stage of the star transformation realm. Besides, if she is Xia Xiaochan, it's impossible that I don't know because the yin-yang pendants that I gave to Xia Xiaochan didn't respond. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But in case she didn't wear the yin-yang pendants, Han Fei inadvertently revealed the yin-yang pendants on his waist. Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen definitely recognized that it was a divine weapon, but they didn't show any reaction. However, they didn't have any reaction. They were probably thinking to themselves, "How dare you call yourself a rogue cultivator?" Confirming that Wu Shuang wasn't Xia Xiaochan, Han Fei lost interest. After eating and drinking, after Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen left, Han Fei and Wang Beichen agreed to exchange swordsmanship. At this moment, Feng Xingliu was still waving at Wu Shuang with a smile. Feng Qingqing asked, "Brother Han Fei, are they really suitable to be friends with?" Han Fei smiled casually. Wang Beichen's purpose is very simple. He wants to exchange swordsmanship with me. It must be my swordsmanship that aroused his curiosity. As for Wu Shuang, it's hard to say. Feng Qingqiang said, "At least you owe her a favor." And Han Fei looked at Feng Qingqing. "And what?" Feng Qingqing added, "And I've heard her name." "Huh?" Feng Xingliu immediately turned his head. "You've heard of her too? Then why didn't you introduce her to me?" "Huh? Why didn't you mention her before?" Feng Qingcheng rolled her eyes at him, and then said, "Her name is indeed Wu Shuang, but she has another name, Wu Shuang the Witch." Wu Shuang the Witch. Han Fei and Feng Xingliu were both dumbfounded. She was so beautiful, so dignified, and she didn't even speak loudly. How could she be a witch? Feng Qingcheng shook her head slightly. Thinking to herself, "Men," she said, "this person participated in the selection of the divine continent of the Middle Ocean not long ago. Coincidentally, just like her elder sister, she had also achieved good results. I just read some simple information about her when I was paying attention to my sister." Han Fei frowned slightly. She was at the same level as Feng Yu, and she participated in the trial of the divine continent of the Middle Ocean more than 300 years ago. It seemed that she was definitely not Xia Xiaochan. Han Fei really didn't see it. Feng Yu had already reached the peak of the star transformation realm. If Wu Shuang was as excellent as Feng Yu, she must have just reached the late stage of the star transformation realm. Besides, the name Wu Shuang the Witch didn't sound very friendly. Han Fei thought of the City of Terror again. The name didn't sound like a good place. How could such a pure late-stage, star, transformation realm cultivator be born there? So, Han Fei made up his mind. He could befriend Wang Beichun, but as for Wu Shuang, even if he did, it would not be too deep. Chapter 23:13. A month later, Han Fei's life was simple this month. He rested and wandered around every day. There were a lot of good things on the crossing, and there were even divine weapons for sale. Divine weapons. They were rare even for some strong masters, but they were on sale here, which showed the wealth of the captain of the crossing. Unfortunately, Han Fei had no need for divine weapons right now. However, it wouldn't hurt if he could make some divine weapons of his own. In this month, Han Fei spent 3 days exchanging swordsmanship with Wang Beichun. The two of them went out to have a match, but it was just a match of swordsmanship and nothing else. After reaching the late stage of the star transformation realm, he needed to pay more attention to his own understanding. Anyway, Han Fei felt that Wang Beichun should have benefited a lot. But in fact, Han Fei himself also benefited a lot. Although he didn't embark on the path of swordsmanship, it didn't mean he didn't know how to play with swords. He was destined not to establish a sword palace anyway, so his understanding of swordsmanship could actually be applied to other major techniques. For example, Han Fei easily learned from Wang Beichun how to make the sword Qi Sky Patrol last forever. It was because Wang Beichun told him that swords were alive. People could breathe in and out, so could swords. Han Fei understood that as long as he could create a sword that could breathe in and out the Tao of the world, it would not only be strong, but also everlasting. That was how he got along with Wang Beichun. They had no other topics to talk about. And Wu Shuang often came to eat hot pot. Feng Xingliu was fascinated by her, so Feng Qingcheng was unhappy and cursed 1,000 times in her heart for seducing my brother. However, the woman didn't show any intentions. Han Fei only emphasized to Feng Xingliu several times that she shouldn't reveal her identity as an ancient demon god. In this regard, Feng Xingliu promised again and again that she wouldn't tell even Wu Shuang. In this way, Han Fei was relieved. Feng Xingliu had too little experience. It was time for him to experience the feeling of first love and heartbreak. Today, the 1-month period had passed. In the Infinity Mirror, the young master of the Yi family had been under Han Fei's control. He hadn't woken up yet, because every once in a while, Han Fei would deprive him of his consciousness. This person's name was Yi Chun. During this period, Han Fei had explored his mind's sea, found his memories, and tampered with them. For example, he was sucked in by the Mirror of Infinity, but Han Fei made it seem that he was sucked in by a gourd. He was killed by his own power. Han Fei shaped him into a gourd. There were monstrous waves in the gourd, which were like cages and swords, cutting him up. But Han Fei didn't hide the god's sealing spear. As the saying went, truth and falsehood were intertwined. Anyway, Han Fei didn't believe that his tampering would be discovered, because in the eyes of the heavenly race, there was no need for Han Fei to tamper with this part of the memory. Besides, Han Fei had already shown the Green Thunder wine gourd in the god's ruins. However, he had never used the Infinity Mirror. It was a killing move, and he would not use it unless it was absolutely necessary. Because he was careful, Yi-chan was the only one who had seen the Mirror of Infinity. Then, he learned about the yin-yang Hao Tian mirror and the secret behind it through Fengxing Liu. On this day, Han Fei was resting on the deck of the crossing, holding a fishing rod and fishing. In fact, there were many people fishing like Han Fei, but definitely not as many as on the dragon boat in the chaotic sea. Because in this wilderness, any creature above the level of explorer would not easily take the bait. Han Fei's fishing skills had changed. He could throw out the fishing hook, mimicking a spirit treasure, and fish for rare sea monsters. At this moment, Han Fei fished up a sea cucumber that looked like it was emitting a blue light. But at this moment, 3 people appeared next to Han Fei. The leader was a woman. She was tall and had a very oppressive temperament. Her strength was at least at the peak. For a moment, Han Fei thought this woman was a venerable emperor. Han Fei put the sea cucumber into the sea of origin, flipped his hand, and put away the fishing rod. He leaned against the railing with a faint smile on his face. "You're here. I thought the heavenly race didn't care about a peak star condensation cultivator. I almost wanted to kill you." The woman glanced at Han Fei indifferently. "You are indeed bold. It seems that you are indeed not afraid of the heavenly race. Today, this game is good. At least you gave us a chance to hunt you." Han Fei shrugged. "Do you think I'm scared? Let's go. As long as you bring enough resources, I'll be happy to let you go. You see, I don't like killing people if I can solve the problem with money." The woman couldn't help but frown when she saw Han Fei's unusual calmness. This man was not afraid of her at all. He was even full of disdain. The emotion in his eyes couldn't be a lie. However, she didn't understand why Han Fei looked down on her so much. When he returned to his room, Feng Xingliu, Feng Qingcheng, and Wu Shuang were all there. Seeing Wu Shuang, Han Fei felt that this girl must have sensed something. Was she here to join the fun? Han Fei greeted her. "Miss Wu Shuang, good morning." Wu Shuang smiled faintly. "You went fishing in the morning. I told Qingcheng and Xingliu the story of the City of Terror for a while." Han Fei said, "That's troublesome." Han Fei took out the Green Thunder liquor gourd and said with a smile, "Oh, right, I forgot to ask. What's your name?" The powerful woman said indifferently, "Ikai. I believe that you will remember this name in the end." Han Fei chuckled. "Really? You must think your name is really good." Ikai snorted. "Cut the crap. Where is he?" Han Fei waved the gourd in his hand and said, "Here. Where are the resources? I have to check them first." Although Han Fei didn't think they would fight on the crossing, what if the heavenly race didn't care about martial arts? One of the 3 people who came this time was at the peak of the star transformation realm. If they really used their full strength, he might not be able to capture Yi-chan as soon as possible. Knock, knock, knock. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. Everybody couldn't help but look at the door, only to hear someone say, "Mr. Han Fei, large-scale transactions are not allowed on the traversal. Once the transaction value exceeds 100,000 kilometers, the crossing will have to collect taxes." Han Fei said, "Come in." On the crossing, a powerhouse at the peak of the star transformation realm walked in with a smile, followed by 2 powerhouses who had just reached the star transformation realm. Han Fei said, "Fellow Taoist, how much is the tax on the crossing?" The man smiled. "It's not expensive, just 5 points. The crossing guarantees that the transaction will be absolutely fair." Han Fei thought to himself, "I risked my life to hunt down a peak star transformation realm cultivator, and now I have to hand over 5% of the resources. However, why do I feel that the crossing is helping me?" Because Han Fei couldn't guarantee the success of this transaction, but the South Arch could. Although he had been on the crossing for a month and hadn't seen the South Arch, could it be that the South Arch was really extorting rich people like the rumors said? Han Fei didn't hesitate for half a second and nodded happily. "Thank you." Ikai frowned slightly, but didn't care too much. She looked at Han Fei. "The 2 million kilometers of resources you want is too much. You should know how much more resources you asked for last time, right?" Han Fei shrugged. "I know, but how can those small fries compare to a peak star transformation realm cultivator, a powerhouse on the verge of the Tao confirming realm? Are they not even worth 2 million kilometers of resources?" Ikai said, You should know that it's better to quit while you're ahead, so that there will at least be a little room for negotiation. Han Fei sneered. What negotiation? I just don't like the Heavenly Clan. Next time I see you, I will still rob you. Why should I negotiate with you? Ikai asked. Are you really not afraid of death? I'm not bluffing. I won't die even if you die. Ikai said indifferently. 1,000,000 kilometers is the limit of the Heavenly Clan. Han Fei grinned. Huh. If you really want to give me 1,000,000 kilometers, I don't mind. How about this? I will destroy 50% of his soul, cut his lifespan by half, and then give him to you. After all, it's an equivalent exchange. If you want a discount, then I have to give you a discount too, right? You should know that I can do it. Han Fei, behind Ikai, a late-stage star transformation realm cultivator, was about to get angry, but was stopped by a gesture from Ikai. Then, Ikai said, I'm very curious. Which force are you from? Do you dare to tell me? Han Fei said, that's a secret. If you want to know, give me another 1,000,000 kilometers of resources. I will definitely tell you and prove it to you. Hearing this, Feng Xingliu immediately said, Hey, Han Fei, this is not appropriate. I can't tell you. Han Fei turned his head and looked at Feng Xingliu. Don't worry. In this day and age, there are no resources that can't be exchanged. As long as this woman can afford the resources, I can tell her the secret. Feng Xingliu really thought that Han Fei would say that he was from the ancient demon god clan, but in the eyes of others, it was clearly a collusion between the two of them. Ikai snorted. I hope you won't reveal it in the entire 10,000 years competition. Otherwise, the Heavenly Clan will eventually find out. Han Fei chuckled. Cut the crap. Give me the resources. With that said, Han Fei walked to the side of the late-stage crossing and said, Since the crossing has come forward, I'll bring out the person first. Then, Han Fei shook the green thunder wine pot, and with a burst of wine fragrance, Ichun was released. His battle suit was corroded, but he was still intact, without any injury. Han Fei tilted his head. Resources? Ikai said, Wake him up. Han Fei chuckled. After he wakes up, he will run away. What if you don't admit it? Give me the resources first. Ikai clenched his fists and casually tossed out 6 small worlds. Han Fei caught them and scanned them with his perception. Quickly determining the amount of resources, he grinned. That's right. The Heavenly Clan is rich and powerful. Do you think they need this? Pah! With a snap of his fingers, Ichun suddenly woke up and looked around vigilantly. When he saw the environment, he immediately felt that something was wrong. Han Fei was here. Why was Ikai here too? What was this place? In his mind, memories surged. He was sucked into a calabash. Then he was hit by a terrifying wave from the calabash and lost consciousness. At this moment, Ichun was still missing a head. In the blink of an eye, his head grew back, and he said coldly, Ikai, why are you here? Ikai glanced at Ichun indifferently. Because of you, the family paid 2,000,000 kilometers of resources. You were captured. Ichun was dumbfounded and froze on the spot. There was only one sentence echoing in his mind. You were captured. Chapter 23:14. As a cultivator at the peak of the star transformation realm, how could he accept the fact that he was captured by a cultivator who hadn't turned into a star yet? Ichun wanted to be furious, but the reality was that this was the ship of the South Thuarch, the strongest cultivator of the divine land of the East Sea. Therefore, the cultivator of the Heavenly Clan once again left in disgrace. This time, even Wushuang was amazed by Han Fei's robbery. 2,000,000 kilometers of resources. She dared say that 60% to 70% of the emperors in this world had never seen so many resources in their lives. But Han Fei took them from the Heavenly Clan so easily. At this moment, Wushuang felt that Han Fei killing a cultivator at the peak of the star transformation realm of the Heavenly Clan was of great significance. That was to show that he dared to kill the people of the Heavenly Clan. If you want to protect them, then give me money. After the tax collectors left, Wushuang said, Fellow cultivator Han Fei, you have to be careful. No matter what you see now, the Heavenly Clan will only be stronger than now. Among the younger generation, the strongest have reached the edge of the Tao proving realm, and have many divine skills. Besides, there are many small forces attached to the heavenly clan. You have to be careful in this competition. Han Fei smiled slightly. Thank you for the reminder, Miss Wu Shuang. 1,000,000 kilometers of resources, even if 5 points were divided, there were still nearly 200,000 kilometers of resources. But Han Fei didn't care. Anyway, the resources he got this time were enough for him to turn into a star. After all, the crossing sheltered him, so it was natural to pay a certain protection fee. The strong had the right to speak. No matter how much the crossing could earn a day, it was because it had a venerable emperor. In the future, he would be able to own a ship like the Traverser and travel the 4 seas. Just by relying on its fame, he would be able to earn countless resources. That would be great. At this moment, Han Fei continued to expand his sea of origin. He didn't need to wait for a long time. After a few months, he would know when he would turn into a star. 2 months and 3 days later. Legend Tavern. This was one of the many taverns on the crossing. One of the characteristics of these taverns was that they collected a lot of stories here, including the north, south, east, west, and the 4 divine lands. Besides, these stories were only told as anecdotes to attract people to drink. Because the wine here was very expensive and they had to pay by the hour, many people came to drink every day just to listen to these stories. Take Feng Xingliu, for example. Ever since he found out that there was such a godly place on the ship, he came here every day, wishing that he could stay in the tavern 24 hours a day. Most importantly, this fellow also knew how to tip people. As long as someone spoke well, he would give them a pile of resources. This made many people sigh in admiration. This was simply inhumane. Because of this, the Rumor Tavern had specially set up a private room for Feng Xingliu, and as a long-term customer, the drinks were 20% off. Originally, Han Fei wasn't very interested in these things, but after hearing some rumors about the Emperor Sparrow, he fell in love with this place. So, Han Fei and Feng Xingliu went to the tavern every day. Occasionally, there would be people dropping by, and they could even have a chat. On this day, the private room was filled with drinks, and the barbecue was served. Feng Xingliu, Han Fei, Feng Qinsheng, Wu Shuang, and Han Fei even dragged Wang Beichun over for a small gathering. The storyteller said, "Today, instead of those insignificant stories, let's talk about the grand competition of 10,000 years and the expert from all over the world." The old man who spoke casually looked at the private room that Han Fei was in. Then he said, "The grand competition of 100,000 years is a grand event that happens every 100,000 years. Last time, heroes gathered in the grand competition, and the South Emperor of the Crossing rose 100,000 years ago. Last time, the gods were still there, and the gods personally selected talents from all over the world. But that was a long time ago. According to my information, today I'll talk about some famous experts." Okay, Oldly, take your time. If you do well, I won't leave today." The old man laughed. The grand competition of 100,000 years involves the heaven-opening realm, the sea expansion realm, and the venerable realm. Of course, there are no venerable realms. There are sea expansion realms every 10,000 years, but we won't talk about them. As for the heaven-opening realm, all the experts on the heaven, earth, and divine role will participate. A rogue cultivator said, "Why? Will there be experts on the divine role this time?" "Hey, I'm not sure, but there are still experts on the heaven role." Someone sighed. "The heaven role is amazing. TSK. It seems that there will be a lot of competition this time." Someone said, "Wait, what are the heaven, earth, and divine roles? Why haven't I heard of them?" Almost half of the people in the tavern didn't know, including Han Fei. The old storyteller chuckled. "Then let's talk about the heaven, earth, and divine roles first. Most people only know that there are 3 major roles in this world, which record the heavenly talents of the 5 divine provinces of the sea realm. But they don't know that the heaven, earth, and divine roles are different." The old man said, "In the whole world, only the divine province of the Middle Sea has 10 experts on the divine role. Among the 10, if someone proves the Tao, there will be a successor to fill the position, maintaining the same number of 10. There are 800 people on the heaven role and 3,000 on the earth role. But except for the Middle Sea Divine Province, the other 4 divine provinces all have heaven and earth roles. Therefore, the heaven and earth roles are different. The divine continent of Zhonghai updated the true heaven role and the true earth role every 1,000 years. So we now know that there are 3,200 people in the heaven role, or even more, because the heavenly talents of the Middle Sea Divine Province are not included. The same is true for the earth role. Someone exclaimed, even those who could be listed on the earth role are extraordinary experts, right? Even if it's a fake role, there are more than 10,000 experts in the sea realm. The sea realm is so big that it's impossible to be listed in the top 10,000. The old storyteller chuckled and said, yeah, right? But don't be shocked by the heaven and earth role. Because many people keep a low profile, they are not included in the heaven and earth role. The replacement of the heaven and earth role is usually due to the lack of people on the heaven and earth role. Sometimes it's hard to find out. However, those who haven't shown up for more than 1,000 years will be kicked out of the heaven and earth role and replaced by someone else. Someone laughed and said, Old Lee, we already know about the heaven, earth, and divine roles. Just tell us who is here this time. Yeah, Old Lee, don't always teach the newbies. An hour is precious in this tavern. The old man laughed and said, all right, then let's talk about some of the experts on the heaven role that I know. Then, the old man took a big gulp of liquor and said, how can the heaven role be separated from the divine clans, factions, and main cities of the 4 divine provinces? This time, I am ranked 39th, first place. Everyone should have heard of the heroic deeds of the divine clans' disciples recently. Old Lee, don't be so long-winded. The old man snorted and said, 300 years ago, in the divine continent of the Middle Ocean, geniuses fought for supremacy. The strongest of the younger generation, Miss Feng Yu, was ranked first on the heaven roll. This time, she is also a participant of the divine continent of the East Ocean's 10,000-year competition. First on the heaven roll? Damn, does it have to be so explosive? How are we going to fight? We might as well just let her win. The old man said, hey, you can't say that. The 10,000-year competition is not as simple as fighting. Don't be so narrow-minded. In the private room, Feng Xingliu's face darkened, and Feng Qingcheng smiled. Han Fei, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. The first place on the heaven roll was decided by the divine continent of the Middle Ocean. Even if the other divine continents also had the first place on the heaven roll, they probably couldn't compete with Feng Yu. Because Han Fei knew that she had reached the peak and was only one step away from becoming a Taoist. Wu Shuang said, Feng Yu is indeed powerful. She won the first place with her own strength. The first place on the heaven roll of the sea realm is almost certain. Feng Xingliu snorted. The first place on the heaven roll? Han Fei patted him on the shoulder. I can tell that you can enter the divine roll. The first place on the heaven roll is nothing. Feng Xingliu was a bit embarrassed and said, the divine roll? That's 10th place at most. Feng Qingcheng and Wu Shuang rolled their eyes secretly. Just a few words of praise, and you're already flying away. Why don't you take a look at your own qualifications? Divine list? The old man rattled on as he recounted Feng Yu's battle achievements in Zhonghai's divine land. Then, Han Fei got to know Feng Yu a little better. As the old man continued to speak, he mentioned more than a dozen names before finally mentioning Wu Shuang. He said, hey guys, do you know that the 36th place on the heaven roll, Wu Shuang from the City of Terror, is on our ship? Han Fei couldn't help but look at Wu Shuang, who didn't seem to care about the title of Wu Shuang. She just smiled. That doesn't sound good. The old man said, Wu Shuang is good at hunting and has the Wind God Fan, an ultra-quality divine weapon. She is also a grandmaster of arrays and the creator of the demon god seal. Han Fei immediately turned around and looked at Wu Shuang. Feng Xingliu also looked at Wu Shuang in shock. But Wu Shuang was a bit shy and pursed her lips with 2 dimples. Han Fei found that the old man seemed to know a lot. Han Fei was about to continue listening when he suddenly had an idea. An inexplicable feeling came to his mind. A thought came to his mind. Should I turn into a star? Immediately, Han Fei thought for a moment and flicked his finger, throwing out a star shell. Reward. The old man was overjoyed to receive Han Fei's reward. "Thank you, sir." But then a voice appeared in his heart. "Give me the information later. I'll buy it." Feng Xingyo was surprised. "Brother, this is the first time you've given a reward," Han Fei said with a smile. "I learned it from you." "Well, listen to me. I suddenly had an epiphany and need to cultivate in seclusion for a few days. I'm going back to my room." A moment later, when Han Fei entered his origin sea, his heart skipped a beat. At this time, the origin sea had been developing for exactly 810,000 years. Han Fei seemed to have expected that. He put on a smile. "Finally, I'm going to turn into a star." Chapter 23:15. Ever since he inquired about Feng Qingqing's theory, Han Fei had a feeling that his star conversion was not simple. However, he didn't expect that it would be 810,000 kilometers. Because the star conversion could happen at any time, and the best time he felt was the best time to do it. Perhaps the star conversion was the best time of the best. But if someone clearly felt that he was going to convert to a star when he was 800,000 kilometers away, but he insisted on converting to a star with 810,000 kilometers, the result might not be better than converting to a star with 800,000 kilometers. Because you didn't have the destiny to reach 810,000 kilometers, you just forcibly converted to a star with 810,000 kilometers. This kind of forced behavior would cause a certain cause and effect, so it was not necessarily suitable. Coincidentally, Han Fei was exactly 810,000 kilometers away from the center. Besides, Feng Qingqing said that it was 1 in a million to convert to a star with 810,000 kilometers, and now it was only heard of in legends. Could it be that he was the 1 in a million chosen by the heavens, the son of destiny? However, Han Fei wasn't surprised. He immediately thought of the demon purification pot, because his origin sea, after all, was the fusion of the origin sea and forged the universe. For a treasure like the demon purification pot, even if you asked it to expand to 640,000 kilometers, it had to agree. Most of the time, he couldn't make the decision for the demon purification pot. Therefore, Han Fei felt that he had benefited from the demon purification pot. But no matter what, he had turned into a star with a distance of 810,000 li. This was like a little cow standing on its head. At this moment, Han Fei immediately stopped the star conversion. He had seen the process of star conversion from the star bead of the blood fiends, and he learned that he could actually control the star conversion. Although his entire origin sea covered an area of 810,000 kilometers, this was only a flat surface, so the resources he got now were only a flat surface. However, the star conversion was to turn this flat surface into a planet. In terms of surface area resources alone, Han Fei's body was not enough to cover the surface of the planet, let alone in terms of volume. However, to create a star, it shouldn't be necessary to cover the entire planet, right? If he only needed to cover the entire planet, did he still need to count the volume? If he counted the volume, then it was over. Han Fei felt that he would have to destroy the entire heavenly clan to barely meet his demand for resources. Therefore, star conversion couldn't be that complicated. Otherwise, why would so many people do it? Otherwise, if he really needed so many resources to transform into a star, then how strong would he be after transforming into a star? There was no reason for him to be able to surpass realms and kill enemies. Therefore, Han Fei suddenly felt that the so-called star conversion was only the first step of the heavenly opening state. It should be the preliminary star conversion, turning the source sea into source stars and giving birth to star beads, should be the most basic star conversion. However, transforming into a star wasn't that simple. If it was an ordinary star, it wouldn't require so many resources. Therefore, the amount of resources one had was greatly related to one's potential. This was because cultivation was to walk on the path of becoming a god. You couldn't just transform into an ordinary star. It was indeed said that the star transformation and the star path were closely linked. In theory, the first step was star conversion, the second was star path, and the third was soul enlightenment. The war god's message to him was to first form the star, then form the earth veins, form the star nucleus, inject life force into it, and then refine his body. This was more like a part of the star path, which was to fuse the source sea with his body. According to what he thought, if the order changed, the first step should be soul enlightenment, the second step should be star conversion, and the third step should be star path. The end of the star path should be the completion of the star conversion. Han Fei didn't know if his guess was right, but there was nothing wrong with transforming into a star now. So, with a thought from Han Fei, the mountains, rivers, and earth began to distort, and part of the source sea that was originally flat began to rise. According to the method of star conversion that he knew, this process might last for a while. 3 days later in the outside world. 2 years later in the source sea. Han Fei clearly felt that the speed of transforming into a star began to accelerate, because a hemispherical shape had begun to appear. A massive amount of resources melted in the source sea, crossed the boundless black mist, and continued to expand outward. From this moment on, it marked the official beginning of the star conversion. 3 days later, Han Fei came out of the source sea. In these 3 days, he found some problems. The energy consumption of the star conversion was increasing, and the resource consumption was a little more than he expected. So he had to come out and ask. After coming out, Han Fei went straight to the Legend Tavern. Sure enough, Feng Xingliu was listening to the story here. Seeing Han Fei, Feng Xingliu immediately greeted him. "Hey, you're out of seclusion? Come and listen. It's about the miracle forest of the South Sea Divine Land. It said that 100 years ago, a holy lady of the spirit race was born. My family is in the South Sea Divine Land. It said that there hasn't been a holy lady in the miracle forest for tens of thousands of years. I didn't expect to hear the news of the birth of a holy lady here." Han Fei was not in the mood to listen to this. He immediately stomped his foot and set up a soundproof array. Immediately, Feng Xingliu hurriedly said, Hey, don't. I'm having a good time." Han Fei said, "You could spend some money to hire me to tell you the story in person. Now I have some questions to ask you." Feng Xingliu said helplessly, "Okay, I feel that you've been weird these days. What's wrong with you?" Han Fei asked, "Let me ask you something. After you start to transform into a star, do you only need to consume resources in the process? Do you want to say something else?" Feng Xingliu said, "Well, theoretically, yes, because the amount of resources in the entire celestial body will not be very large. So, hey, wait, you've turned into a star? Wait, you just said a year ago that your origin sea was only 400,000 kilometers long. How come you suddenly turned into a star? How can it be so fast?" Feng Xingliu was shocked. Although he knew that Han Fei's origin sea would be developed faster with enough resources, he didn't expect it to be so fast. "But in 10 years, if you say you're going to transform into a star, I can accept it. But it's only been a year, and you're saying you're going to transform into a star? What kind of speed is that?" Han Fei hurriedly stopped him. "Have you forgotten that I'm a clone? I'm different from others. My origin sea is much faster." "Wow." Feng Xingliu was shocked. "Is this the Son of God? He's so strong. The speed of developing the origin sea is 10 times faster than mine. No wonder those people want to hunt the ancient demon gods. So it's for this." Feng Xingliu made up his mind. He must not let others know about this, lest his good brother be harmed. Immediately, Feng Xingliu asked, "Well, have you started?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "Yes." Feng Xingliu asked curiously, "How big is it?" Han Fei answered without hesitation, 490,000 kilometers. Feng Xingliu grinned. "Sure enough, I'm a genius. Even though I'm the son of God, I'm only 490,000 kilometers away. It's only 490,000ly star, exactly the same as me. It seems like my potential is still very big." Han Fei asked, "So, what should I pay attention to at the beginning?" Feng Xingliu thought for a moment and said, "Theoretically, in the early stage of the star transformation, you only need to form a natal star. You have enough resources to form a natal star city, so it doesn't matter." "But," Han Fei frowned. "But what?" Feng Xingliu said, "At that time, if possible, it would be best to find a way to get an astral core. Devouring that astral core could nourish the source star and help it gather energy. The stronger the astral core, the better. Also, if there's a world origin, it'll be even better. Of course, it doesn't matter even if you use it after the star transformation. It's just a matter of sequence. If you have it before, the origin star will be more stable. If you look for it later, you'll need to spend some time consolidating the origin star. Han Fei's heart sank. As soon as he heard Feng Xingliu say that the origin star was unstable, he knew that if it could be stabilized before, who would want to stabilize the origin star later? Immediately, Han Fei asked, "Wait a moment. I know what the world origin is, but what is a star core?" Feng Xingliu explained, "It's the core of someone else's origin star, or the core of a natural star. However, the energy contained in the core of a natural star was much weaker. You should know that when transforming into a star, if you want to transform from a flat surface into a sphere, the inside of the natal star is not empty. It also needs to squirm and find the most suitable state for itself. At this time, such a huge amount of energy needs to be mobilized. Even if you don't use energy now, after the star transformation, you'll still need energy to sort out the inside of the origin star." "Sort?" Feng Xingliu nodded. "Yes, that's the process of sorting out. However, this sorting needs the support of a huge amount of energy. The best energy is the star core. The energy contained in a star core is beyond imagination." Han Fei suddenly had an idea. "Well, the heavenly race powerhouse I killed, can I directly dig out his star core?" Feng Xingliu said in surprise. "Can you find out where his origin star is? It's different from those who haven't opened the sky. Those who haven't opened the sky may also have their origin star fall into the sea realm after they die. We can even land on it and plunder the resources of their origin sea. But once they split open the sky, even if they died, their natal star would still be connected to the sea realm, but they would not appear in the sea realm. That was because it was an independent star. You could only go through a specific void node to reach their natal star. When I turned into an origin star, it was my uncle, a venerable emperor, who dug out a star core for me." Han Fei raised his eyelids. "She's still telling me this now?" Han Fei didn't care and said, "So, after he dies, his origin star is still alive?" Feng Xingliu nodded. "Yes. It's said that as long as the origin star is still alive, even if this person's body dissipates and his soul is destroyed, he will be reborn in the future. And after he turns into an origin star again, he can find the origin star that he lost in the past. Of course, this is just a legend. In fact, in the star ocean, when people die, their origin star will most likely be swallowed by star ocean behemoths. At that time, they will really die." Han Fei, it wasn't the first time that Han Fei had heard this, and he even had guesses himself. However, even in Feng Xingliu's family environment, this was just a legend, and legends were not to be believed. Han Fei nodded. "Got it. Keep listening. I'm leaving." Chapter 23:16. As soon as Han Fei came out, he returned to the origin sea a moment later. But immediately, he crossed the galaxy swamp and appeared above the galaxy sea. In his hand, he was carrying a broken body. Han Fei originally planned to sacrifice this late-stage star transformation heavenly race powerhouse to the god of war. But fortunately, he was not in a hurry to use the power of the god of war's seal, so he didn't rush to sacrifice it. He didn't expect it would come in handy now. Han Fei held the nautical panorama in his hand, and as the needle turned, Han Fei took a soul dust from the broken body and opened his origin sea. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei quickly crawled in. Han Fei had entered other people's origin sea more than once or twice, and he didn't feel anything wrong before. But now that he thought about it carefully, if the origin sea of a heaven-opening state expert was a huge planet, then wouldn't it be equivalent to crossing a long distance in a galaxy sea and instantly appearing in someone else's origin sea? Therefore, the so-called connection between a cultivator and the origin sea was actually equivalent to a miniature wormhole. With such a gentle drilling, he had crossed billions of miles of galaxies. In the origin sea of the heavenly clan expert, as soon as Han Fei appeared, he felt that there were several kinds of great paths here, trying to suppress him. Han Fei felt that the demon purification pot was about to come out, but this time, Han Fei hurriedly said, "Master Calabash, this person is dead." I'll do it myself this time. Sure enough, the demon purification pot didn't continue to drill out from between Han Fei's eyebrows. Han Fei sensed that this Origin Sea world was quite repulsive to him. He didn't know if it was because he killed the master of this Origin Sea, so this world was trying to suppress him. Unfortunately, the ownerless power of great paths couldn't suppress Han Fei, except for restricting Han Fei's soul from fully exploring the Origin Sea. Whoosh! Han Fei smiled slightly. This was the first time he had strolled so leisurely in someone else's Origin Sea. In the past, he came and went quickly, basically relying on the demon purification pot's absorption. Now, he didn't rely on the demon purification pot, so he felt it the most real. This huge planet was full of vitality. As far as Han Fei could see, this planet was a world with a good environment. Raising his head, he could even see the blazing sun. Did this guy create his own galaxy? In his perception, there were several places in his Origin Sea that seemed to have been pierced by some kind of power. Could it be that he had done something to his Origin Sea during their battle? Han Fei smiled and didn't care. Because this person had died unjustly, most of his power had been dispersed to his doppelgangers, and then his main body's consciousness had been directly stolen, causing him to fall into a deep slumber. Therefore, he had never used the power of the star source. No matter what, this person was at the late stage of the star transformation realm and had a much better understanding of the star transformation realm than him. Han Fei walked and stopped, trying to remember. The man's natal star had a unique backflow of earth veins. After traveling for more than 100,000 kilometers, Han Fei found more than 3,200 main earth veins, hundreds of thousands of branch earth veins, and tens of millions of undetectable, insignificant branch earth veins. After passing through 800 meridians, it led to the depths of the star. This is the earth vein shaping technique. After transforming into a star, the heaven opening stage would all know how to shape and sort out their own earth veins. It's a pity that this kind of shaped earth vein is part of the body of this star. It's too difficult to dig it out and turn it into my own. However, the star core should have gathered most of the vitality and power of this star. If I dig it out, it'll be equivalent to gaining most of his power. Han Fei thought of something and came to a place where the earth vein converged in a few steps. After a while, Han Fei had already appeared very deep underground. In theory, if there was a star core, then it should be the Earth's core, which was the core of this star. Following the earth vein to the deepest part, the main earth vein began to converge. Further down, Han Fei found a path in some ancient cracks where the power of the Great Path was bursting out from the inside. This power of the Great Path was repelling Han Fei, but it was just repelling. It couldn't resist Han Fei's power. But the annoying thing was that these repulsive forces would greatly limit his perception range. And the closer he went to the star core, the stronger this repulsive force was, and the smaller his perception range was. But after all, this was just an ownerless Origin Sea, so Han Fei naturally wasn't worried. After a while, Han Fei felt a terrifyingly high temperature, so high that Han Fei felt he would be burned. There was also a huge amount of energy that swarmed towards the three twisted pillars. The so-called star core was much smaller than he had imagined. Han Fei saw that it was only less than 500 kilometers away. However, as soon as he glanced over, his body suddenly stiffened, because he saw an incredible scene. The huge amount of energy swarmed towards the three twisted pillars. He didn't care at first. However, Data appeared in Han Fei's eyes, and a strange creature that he had only heard of appeared. Name: Three-Headed Dragon Snake, Star Ocean Behemoth. Introduction: The three-headed dragon snake is a relatively rare star ocean behemoth that lives in the star ocean. It is a strange beast that is born by finding ownerless stars and absorbing the power of the stars. By devouring the power of the stars to strengthen its own strength, it can devour the power of the stars and embark on a unique great path. The star ocean behemoth is good at finding and discovering stars that are compatible with itself. Level 108, Quality, Star Ocean Behemoth, Realm, Late Stage of the Planetary State, Great Path, Force Field, Combat Skills, Dragon Snake Soul Fire, Force Field Storm, Weird Power Cage, Collectible Behemoth's Heart, Behemoth Crystal Core, Three-Headed Dragon Teeth, Absorbable, remarks the three-headed dragon snake is about to advance to the star level. Be careful. Wow, a Star Ocean Behemoth? Han Fei's eyes widened. Although he had long known that there were Star Ocean behemoths in the Star Ocean, he never thought that he would encounter one in this situation. Besides, what level was the planetary level? What was the star level? Fortunately, the information said that he was also at level 108, which was equivalent to the late stage of the star transformation realm. But he should still be one step away from the late stage of the star transformation realm. Han Fei didn't expect that the enemy's origin sea that he had fought so hard to conquer would be occupied by a Star Ocean behemoth the first time he saw it. At this time, he remembered some traces of battle and destruction on the form's surface. It was probably the destructive blow that the three-headed dragon snake dealt to some ordinary consciousness entities in the origin sea. When Han Fei looked at the three-headed dragon snake, the six big eyes of the three-headed dragon snake were also staring at Han Fei, and the eyes were round, showing a dumbfounded look. The three-headed dragon snake was probably also confused. Wasn't this person already dead? Wasn't the source star already empty? Why did another person pop up now? The three-headed dragon snake's round eyeballs gradually shrank and became vertical. It was obvious that he was ready to enter battle mode. Han Fei immediately activated the Great Path, activated the God-slaying gloves, activated the God-thought beads, and enhanced by the power of the Way of Heaven. This was the first time he was fighting against a Star Ocean behemoth. He didn't know what the opponent's combat power would be like, so he had to be careful. The three dragon heads roared one after another, and the space was covered with star core flames. Swish, the three-headed dragon snake was enraged when its giant tail swept over. It thought to itself, "Don't leave if you dare to come here." Han Fei was never weaker than anyone in terms of strength. The sacrificing punch was so terrifying that it had reached the level of the late stage of the star transformation realm. Rumble, Han Fei and the three-headed dragon snake flew out at the same time and broke a pile of inexplicable rocks in this narrow space. I thought the Star Ocean behemoth was strong. I didn't expect it to be so weak. Han Fei was about to attack when he found that the gravity here was changing. But Han Fei had also mastered the Great Path of Gravity, and now it had gradually evolved into a force field. By changing the force field around him, he eliminated the power created by the three-headed dragon snake. As the saying went, the great paths attracted each other. Maybe because of this reason, Han Fei, the heavenly race powerhouse, and a three-headed dragon snake collided with each other. Bam! 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 At this time, the god-slaying gloves played a role, and the three-headed dragon snake often fell into an inexplicable state of madness. As a result, the lily was crazily suppressed by Han Fei, punching and kicking. Its skin was torn, and its mouth was broken and dislocated by Han Fei. Han Fei didn't know if it had gradually adapted to the god-slaying gloves, but he suddenly found that he was imprisoned by a strange force field. Steel. The three-headed dragon snake shook its head, fixed its dislocated chin, and spewed out a strange magnetic force, forming a storm. It was about to cover the imprisoned Han Fei, but the next moment, it suddenly forgot how to imprison a cage. Hey, what is my great path again? The three-headed dragon snake had never encountered this before. It was dumbfounded. Han Fei, on the other hand, launched the great path of convergence and bombarded the three-headed dragon snake's body like raindrops. After several breaths of time, the thick-skinned, three-headed dragon snake began to emit a bluish-green flame. This flame could burn one's divine soul. Han Fei said, "Steel." The three-headed dragon snake. Puff! After fighting for more than 300 minutes, Han Fei finally killed the three-headed dragon snake. He happened to lack the dragon tendon of the heaven-opening state, so he accepted it. Han Fei dragged the three-headed dragon snake with one hand, looked at the core of the star, and tore off the battle suit on his body that had been burned to the point of breaking. His physique is strong, and his divine soul power has been able to block me for so long. In the end, he even managed to erupt a bit. The power of chi and blood was shocking. Its overall strength is comparable to the late stage of the star transformation realm, and even close to the peak of the star transformation realm. Is this the power of a star behemoth? Isn't it a bit too strong? Han Fei was shocked. If it weren't for the void-stealing technique, this battle might have taken 6 hours to decide the winner. And this was just a rare star behemoth in the Star Sea. Wasn't it one level higher than ordinary star behemoths? What if there was another legendary? Chapter 23:17. Han Fei wanted to stuff the three-headed dragon snake directly into his origin sea, but he didn't succeed after giving it a try. Why can't I stuff it into my origin sea? Is it impossible to put these things into my origin sea in the Star Ocean? Han Fei couldn't help but reach out to grab the star core, but his clothes were burned by the terrifying energy of the star core. Han Fei was speechless. Having no choice, he could only condense an energy battle suit and attach it to his body. It seemed that it was time to build a divine-level battle suit for himself. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing if he accidentally lost his clothes in a fight. Hey! Han Fei gathered his strength and launched a golden fist marked from the Earth's core to the Earth's surface, and then straight to the sky. Let's fight! In an instant, countless fist marks burst out, and soon, a super huge hole was dug out by Han Fei. When Han Fei pulled the star core with a void hand, he clearly felt that the whole planet seemed to have a tug-of-war with him. Earth veins! Han Fei thought of the god of war's words again. First create a planet, shape the earth veins, give birth to the star core, inject vitality into it, and then temper the body. It seemed that the earth veins were prepared for the star core. The star nucleus was equivalent to the human heart. Moving one part of it would affect the entire body. Figuring this out, Han Fei cut the earth veins. When the earth veins collapsed one after another, Han Fei felt that the planet seemed to be collapsing internally. Let's go. Han Fei wanted to kick the star core, which was more than 500 kilometers in diameter, away, but the star core only rolled a few times. Han Fei's face suddenly changed. This thing is so heavy. Its density has reached a terrifying level. That feeling was similar to the first time he had grabbed a pocket world. As expected of the core of a star, it is indeed extraordinary. The terrifying amount of energy gathered within it is most likely enough to supply the entire star's needs. Han Fei burst out the void hand and dragged the star core and the three-headed dragon snake to the Earth's surface slowly. The navigator continued to point, and after Han Fei forcibly tore a huge hole with the divine fist, he dragged the two of them into it. What Han Fei didn't know was that soon after he left the planet, the spiritual plants on the planet began to decay and would completely wither in a few decades. As for this star, because it had lost its star core, it was inevitable that it would perish. But Han Fei didn't have time to observe the extinction of a star. In the sea of stars, thanks to the navigation of the navigator, Han Fei dragged the star core in one hand and the three-headed dragon snake in the other, and was about to drill into his own sea of stars. Suddenly, Han Fei had a sense of crisis. He only had time to turn around, only to see a bright red palm suddenly slapping at him. "Who are you?" Feeling the terrifying pressure, Han Fei's eyelids twitched crazily. "Steal." Han Fei hadn't seen the person yet, so he could only steal the power of this handprint. However, in the next moment, many cracks appeared on his body, and he had nowhere to vent his energy, so he condensed an energy explosion on the surface of his body. In this way, he released the stolen power. Besides, when Han Fei realized that something was wrong, the power he stole was interrupted in an instant, so he didn't steal much. Otherwise, Han Fei suspected that he would directly explode. "So strong. I can't even bear a handprint?" Han Fei was shocked. Was this a venerable emperor? When Han Fei came back to his senses, he saw a beautiful woman with a fan-shaped hairpin in her hair and a slim red dress, which could be worn for daily use or as a battle suit. The woman was looking Han Fei up and down, as well as the star core and the three-headed dragon snake. Han Fei asked solemnly, "Who are you?" and venerable emperor of the heavens? Han Fei was ready to call his eldest senior brother. The reason why he didn't take action was that the woman didn't have any killing intent. The woman stretched lazily and said leisurely, "Can you put on your clothes first? Do you want to keep that thing in front of me?" Han Fei. Han Fei looked down, blushed, and hurriedly condensed an energy battle suit to cover himself. He had no choice. His previous battle suit was burned by the Star Core, and he only condensed an energy battle suit. He didn't expect that he would be ambushed at the gate of his origin sea. Had this person been ambushing him for a long time? When the energy battle suit condensed, Han Fei asked again, "Who are you?" A faint smile appeared on the beautiful woman's pretty face. "You can call me South Arch, or you can also call me Ant-Man." "Shoot!" Han Fei was stunned. Was this the South Arch? He had always thought that the South Arch was a man. Why was it a woman? If it was the South Arch, he guessed right. She was indeed a venerable emperor. Moreover, although everyone was on the crossrail, the distance between the stars was vast. When did she arrive? Or did she just arrive? Seeing that the South Arch didn't want to kill him, Han Fei's attitude changed drastically. He hurriedly cupped his hands. "Greetings, Ant-Man. Thank you for helping me last time." Han Fei meant that he was chased by the Heavenly Clan. Although Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen appeared, without the crossing, he would have had to ask Feng Xingliu to activate the venerable Emperor Jade Slip. The South Arch chuckled. "Everyone has been wondering who you are. It turns out that you are from the barbaric ancient clan of the West Sea. Although the war god of your savage, desolate ancient race wasn't a true divine being, your bloodline still produced a divine being other than the war god. Why are you hiding it?" Han Fei's heart did a flip. Did the South Arch see the god of war seal on me? Since the god of war dared to ask him to find the barbaric ancient clan, the god of war seal should be an important symbol of the barbaric ancient clan. As the top independent cultivator of the East Sea Divine Prefecture, the South Arch was said to be extremely powerful. She might have been to the other 4 divine prefectures. It was not surprising that she knew this. However, Han Fei knew very little about the barbaric ancient clan. He thought for a moment and then said, "Annie Nan, this is the East Sea Divine Prefecture. What's the use of my identity as a barbaric ancient clan? Besides, with my relationship with the Phoenix God clan, the more mysterious I appear, the better it is for me, isn't it?" The South Arch agreed. The powerful clans of the West Sea Divine Prefecture couldn't be high profile in the East Sea Divine Prefecture. If it was the South Sea Divine Prefecture or the North Sea Divine Prefecture, it would be better. For example, the Phoenix God clan could be arrogant in the East Sea Divine Prefecture, but the West Sea Divine Prefecture was too far away. The South Arch didn't ask anymore. "I was wondering why there was an anomaly in the star sea outside the crossing. You found the natal star of the Heavenly Clan and happened to encounter the Star Ocean Behemoth." Han Fei hurriedly said, "Auntie Nan, you're wise." The South Arch snorted. "You're quite sweet. Fortunately, you only encountered a planetary star ocean behemoth. Otherwise, even if it advanced to the star level, you would have a hard time." "Not necessarily. You seem to have some special means." Han Fei smiled awkwardly. "Well, sorry for the embarrassment, Annie Nan." Han Fei wanted to run now, fearing that the South Arch would take the resources he worked so hard to get. If the South Arch wanted them, should he give them to her or not? The South Arch said, "This is the first time you've encountered a star ocean behemoth, right?" Han Fei nodded. This was indeed the first time. When he saw the 3-headed dragon snake, he was stunned. The beautiful woman, South Deity, said, "Star Sea Beast, you have to take out his beast crystal. Only then will it be considered a true death. Otherwise, the crystal core is still in the body, and the body hasn't been completely crushed, so you naturally can't put into the origin sea, because theoretically, it's still alive." Ah, this, Han Fei was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that to be the case. So, the Star Ocean Behemoth could actually be put into the origin sea. Han Fei put one hand into the Star Ocean Behemoth's body and took out the behemoth crystal core. He glanced at it and found that it was a kind of refining material, the main material for forging divine weapons. It also contained some star power, but Han Fei didn't know what star power was. Now that the South Arch was in front of him, he had no time to study it. Then, with a thought from Han Fei, the space phantom of the Origin Sea descended, and the Star Ocean behemoth was immediately taken into the Origin Sea. Han Fei was speechless. So this is the reason I've been dragging it for so long. Han Fei looked at the Star Ocean core again, only to hear the South Arch say, "This person's Star Ocean core is in the late stage of the star transformation realm. You haven't turned into a star yet. How can you take it so casually? Even if you drag it to the entrance of your Origin Sea by force, you still can't put it in. You have to erase the source of great Tao in this Star Ocean core first and make it ownerless. Then you can smoothly put it into the Origin Sea." Then, the South Arch shook her head slightly. "Forget it. You're still not strong enough to erase the source of great Tao in the late stage of the star transformation realm. I'll help you." As she spoke, the South Arch grabbed the Star Ocean core, and a force field was forcibly removed. Then, a terrifying power burst out in the void. It should be the South Arch erasing this person's source of great Tao. After a while, the South Arch said lightly, "Try again." Han Fei's heart moved, and the Origin Sea World Phantom descended again. The next moment, the Star Ocean core was also taken in. Shoot! Han Fei suddenly felt that it was really scary to be uneducated. He didn't even know this. The South Arch suddenly said, "How did you get the inheritance of the God of War seal? You don't even know this. You're not from the Savage Ancient clan, are you?" "Huh. Of course I'm from the Savage Ancient clan." The South Arch shook her head. "You're not. Otherwise, as the inheritor of the God of War seal, how could you not even know the way to collect the Star Ocean behemoth and the Star Ocean core? You are more like an independent cultivator. You know nothing about this world." Han Fei said, "Well, Auntie Nan, if I say I'm from the Savage Ancient clan, would you believe me?" The South Arch said, "Oh, really? Then you should know that with the God of War seal, you should have the God of War axe blessed by the God of War. Where's your axe?" Han Fei rolled his eyes. My God of War axe," the South Arch said mockingly. "You're lying. Keep lying. There's only one pair of God of War axes. It's with the God of War. Why would the God of War give it to you? Huh, you're just an independent cultivator." Han Fei. Chapter 23:18. As expected, uncultured people were truly terrifying. South Deity only needed a few words to expose my identity. Damn, I'm like a kid who can't stand the questioning at all. Han Fei was silent for a moment, and suddenly said, "Auntie Nan, you didn't suddenly appear here just to expose my identity, did you?" South Deity teased. "I'm not acting anymore." Han Fei suddenly smiled and said, "Okay, I'll tell you. I'm a trial taker of the Temple of Time." South Deity smiled lightly. "That's a good explanation. Forget it. I don't care who you are. Are you interested in joining the crossing? You will be protected by the crossing." Huh? Han Fei was stunned. He didn't expect such an answer. Why did South Deity want him to join the crossing? He couldn't help but look at his Origin Sea. Logically speaking, because of the galaxy quagmire, it was impossible to tell just how big his Origin Sea was right now. Furthermore, even if he had already transformed into a star, there were countless experts on the crossing, and the stars were as vast as the sea. Why would the South Emperor seek him out? Han Fei thought about it and shook his head slightly. "I appreciate Auntie Nan's kindness, but I still have a lot of things to do and enemies to fight. I'm afraid I can't join the crossing." South Deity snorted. "Aren't you afraid that I'll punish you now? A kid who hasn't turned into a star dares to refuse the kindness of a venerable emperor? You're the first person I've seen." Han Fei said, "I don't think Auntie Nan's clone and strength will fight a kid who hasn't turned into a star, right?" "Humph." South Deity waved her hand casually. "Go. Remember, don't be rash when you go down and drag a Star Ocean Colossus and an expert star core to a place you shouldn't be. Also, you owe me a favor. Although your favor is useless now, I still think highly of you." Han Fei's heart did a flip. Did South Deity locate me because of these two things? Han Fei had to figure this out. It was like there was a sword hanging over his head. If South Deity could find his natal star, then others could naturally find their natal stars too. In this way, how could he guarantee his safety? Since the South Emperor didn't seem to have any killing intent, Han Fei braced himself and asked, "Ant-Nan, I have a question." The South Deity seemed to know what Han Fei was going to ask. She stretched lazily and said, "This is the second favor." Han Fei was stunned for a moment, wondering if this was a favor. However, the South Emperor didn't seem to give him a chance to regret. She threw a golden talisman at him. Han Fei subconsciously grabbed it and sensed it. A great technique appeared in his mind. Star concealment technique, heaven-splitting divine quality. Introduction. The Milky Way is vast, and there are billions of stars. Everything that can be seen is a corner of chaos. Undersea expansion, the stars were nowhere to be seen. Above the sea expansion realm, the stars appeared. The light of the stars was the manifestation of a cultivator's natal star. When cultivators approached each other, it wasn't stars approaching each other, but they were shining at the same time. The star concealment art could conceal the light of the stars, dimming the natal star, which was why it could hide in the primal chaos. Derivation, unknown effect, conceal the light of the star's drawback. An origin star that conceals the light of the stars is easily mistaken by the star behemoth as a silent star and will be attacked by the star behemoth. Note, conceal the starlight, and the sea of origin is not easily detected by outsiders. When Han Fei saw this information, he was dumbfounded. This completely overturned his understanding of stargazing. Whether it was the mobile castle or the sea monster fortress, the way they searched for prey was by observing the sea of stars. If there was a twinkling star, they would chase after it. At that time, Han Fei thought that it was because the cultivators were close to each other that their natal stars were close to each other. However, this star concealment art told Han Fei that it was all wrong. It wasn't that their natal stars were close to each other, but that their starlight shone collectively at that moment. In fact, their natal stars were still very far away. Han Fei was stunned for a long time. Then he asked the first question that he had been asking for a long time: where can the starlight come from without the scorching sun? The South Emperor said, "Before you turn into a star, you can regard your natal star as the scorching sun." Han Fei asked again. The starlight burst out in different places. How can the stars move so fast in the vast sea of stars? Han Fei couldn't understand. Even if it was just starlight, the position of the stars was fixed. Then, the South Emperor looked at Han Fei like an idiot. Light. The light emitted by a shining star has no direction. You can see the light no matter where you stand. Only where your real body is, the starlight shines the brightest. Idiot. The South Emperor waved her hand casually and said, "Remember, you owe me 2 favors." The South Emperor's figure turned into spots of light and dissipated as if blown by the wind. A clone? A projection? Han Fei's eyes flickered. Now, he finally understood the principle of stargazing. Damn, I've been severely despised. However, he seemed to have aroused the South Emperor's strong interest and owed her 2 favors, which made Han Fei feel a little uncomfortable. After a while, in the Sea of Origin, because the ownerless star core was in his Sea of Origin, he could mobilize the power of the Sea of Origin at will and directly wrap the star core in it. Sure enough, Feng Xingye was right. With the star core, Han Fei immediately felt that the consumption of resources and the energy of the Sea of Origin returned to normal. He didn't know how long this star core could last, but a star core in the late stage of the star transformation realm should be enough. Han Fei didn't pay attention to the star core, but began to practice the star concealment technique. He didn't want what happened today to happen again. Otherwise, when he casually stepped out of the sea of stars and suddenly encountered a venerable emperor, he would be scared out of his wits. After a while, Han Fei learned that the so-called star concealment technique was actually used on him to cover the starlight. It turned out that due to the fact that cultivators were connected to the origin sea, the connection between the two of them was this starlight. Therefore, the star concealment technique was used to cover this starlight. 3 days later, on the crossing, the South Emperor looked up at the Sea of Stars and found that a shining star in the Sea of Stars suddenly dimmed, lost its brilliance, and disappeared in the endless Sea of Stars. Tisk, as expected of a monster that can transform into a star within 810,000 li. It only took him 3 days to cover the starlight. Phew, Han Fei came out of the Sea of Origin, feeling very good. This star concealment technique might not be very important to others, but it was extremely precious to him. Covering the starlight ensured that his whereabouts were secret. Together with his heavenly concealment divine technique and the infinite transformation technique, it was almost impossible for anyone below the venerable emperor level to find his whereabouts. Even if the venerable emperor observed the time in person, he wouldn't be able to find him now. Thinking of this, Han Fei felt very happy. In this way, he could attack the heavenly clan without worry. The days on the crossing were destined to be easy. He wondered if it was because they were close to the divine capital dynasty. So, the battles in the wilderness were more frequent. Many people who met the crossing didn't know it. Anyway, they only knew it was a camp, so they could go up. Therefore, the crossing took in a lot of people along the way. Han Fei sighed with emotion. The daily resource income was an astronomical figure. Even if he forced the heavenly clan to get resources, it might not be enough for the crossing's income for a few months. In the next few months, Han Fei would occasionally cultivate in seclusion for a few days. In the rest of the time, he listened to stories with Feng Xingliu. Unconsciously, it seemed that Wu Shuang had become his friend. Although Wu Shuang only visited him occasionally, listened to stories, and came to eat occasionally, she had a terrifying sense of affinity. Even though Han Fei knew that her title was Wu Shuang, he didn't feel very vigilant towards this girl. A year later, this went on for a year, and Han Fei's Origin Sea was about to be completed. Han Fei felt that it would take him at most half a month to successfully turn into a star. In fact, the situation was better than Han Fei imagined. A star core in the late stage of the star transformation stage contained too much energy. He didn't know if it was because this person was from the heavenly clan, but the energy in the star core was so abundant. Anyway, this star core almost guaranteed that he would completely turn into a star from beginning to end, and it seemed that there might still be some energy left. Another half a month later, Han Fei stood in the Origin Sea, suppressing the joy in his heart, because on this day, the last piece of darkness that covered the Origin Sea was about to completely dissipate. 3 hours later, Han Fei's Origin Sea trembled slightly. At this moment, an Origin star was born, and Han Fei clearly felt that between his eyebrows, a milky white bead slowly emerged. I also have a star bead. Han Fei's voice was slightly emotional. In addition to the star bead, he also felt that inside the Origin star, the energy was gathering abnormally, as if it was giving birth to a star core. But these powers were too general and not enough to give birth to something like a star core. After all, the internal energy in the Origin Sea at the beginning of the star transformation stage was too chaotic. Han Fei perceived and found that there were still some resources left from the heavenly clan, about less than 400,000 kilometers of resources. His heart skipped a beat. Actually, the area of his star wasn't small. His various resources weren't enough to cover the surface of his natal star. As for the remaining resources and the remaining power of the star core, they were just leftovers, so he might as well use them all at once. So, Han Fei sat cross-legged, with his whole body as the center. Inside the Origin star, the Tao surged, and the energy of the remaining star core suddenly exploded, stimulating the Origin star to tremble violently. On the star, the remaining resources were gathered around Han Fei, shattered by the power of the Tao, turned into the energy of the Origin star, and scattered everywhere. Origin return, different from others. Han Fei's Origin Sea was the path of Origin return. He turned all the resources here into the energy of the star itself. In this way, Han Fei had no resources at all. However, the strength of his Origin star was consolidated in just half a day. At this time, when Han Fei looked at his information again, he found an abnormal change. Owner, Han Fei level, 105, Sky Creator Star Transformation, C10,000 Family Tree, 200016 Immortal Spiritual Energy, 390,000 Divine Soul, 709 Yuan, 709, 2598 points. Perception range, 7. 1 million kilometers power, 7. 0 3-star power, 703,0111 waves. First spiritual heritage, primordial vein. Second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness. First spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit, swallowing fish, level 99. Second spiritual beast, emperor sparrow, level 101. Main art, void stealing, level 9. Avoid fishing, emperor, ultra quality. Chapter 2319. Han Fei was surprised by his brand new information template, but he wasn't surprised. His realm had changed from soul enlightenment to star conversion, which was a matter of course. As for level 105, Han Fei could understand that he hadn't done a good job in star conversion, and there should be a long way to go. Han Fei had a hunch that the chaotic energy had become immortal energy. Chaotic energy was the power needed by the sea expansion state. It was a transitional power that would eventually be replaced. After all, once the sky was opened, one could set foot in the star ocean and absorb chaotic energy. The reason why the chaotic energy still existed before star conversion was also understandable, because for ordinary heaven opening state experts, it was not easy to set foot in the star ocean to cultivate at any time before star conversion. Maybe they could cross the star ocean quagmire, but being in the star ocean itself was dangerous. But after star conversion, it might be a relatively simple thing to set foot in the star ocean. So in the information template, the chaotic energy was replaced by immortal energy. What surprised Han Fei was that his soul and power had undergone some kind of transformation, but they retained the original way of expression. For example, Han Fei's current soul showed 709 yuan. Han Fei didn't know why it was in yuan, but 1 yuan was equal to 1 million points of soul power, which was a very simple data conversion. The same was true for his power. It changed from wave to star power. There was no problem in understanding it, but Han Fei didn't know what the specific unit of star power was. However, since the previous way of expression was retained, it seemed that this transformation didn't seem to be complete. For this kind of thing, he could just ask Feng Xingliu later. Of course, he'd better not ask for now. Otherwise, his star conversion would be a bit too fast. Before star conversion, Han Fei had heard that the gap in strength between star conversion and star conversion wasn't very big. Han Fei found out, but the truth was not like that. He didn't know if it was because he was an 810,000 kilometer star conversion, so his power and soul had also been greatly improved. Both of them broke the 7 million mark. For ordinary people, they might be star conversion 300,000 kilometers away. It was conceivable that they said their strength didn't grow much before and after star conversion, which was a reason. Besides, no matter how his strength grew before and after star conversion. However, there were two things that were absolutely incomparable to the star transformation stage. Han Fei felt that after the star bead was born, he could mobilize the power of his natal star within the tolerance range of his natal star and burst it out through the star bead. Although Han Fei hadn't tried it, he felt that if he were to launch such a power, it might be far more powerful than all of his current techniques. Another benefit was that when the natal star evolved, it would automatically fuse with the heavenly Taoist, absorbing and giving birth to its own Taoist charm. This meant that Han Fei's fighting power would be greatly increased. For example, he could use his ultimate moves many times. The only shortcoming of his origin sea was that it looked extremely barren, because everything that should have been there had been absorbed by Han Fei and turned into a part of his natal star. It's finally turned into a star. Han Fei had thought that this day would be very far away, but when he walked out of the chaotic wasteland, he realized that this step was actually not very far away, especially after becoming enemies with the celestial race. He felt as if his resources were flowing like water. Would Luo Xiaobai and the others have the same feeling when they left the chaotic wasteland? For example, Zhang Xuanyu and the others were very suitable for survival in the wilderness. It wouldn't be a big problem for them to quickly open up an origin sea of 100,000 kilometers. Now it had been more than 350 years, and they might have already opened the sky. A faint smile appeared on Han Fei's lips. He knew that it was time for him to go. It was safe on the crossing, but it was so comfortable here that he forgot what the wilderness was. If it weren't for turning into a star, he wouldn't have stayed on the crossing for so long. In fact, it was only a year, but in Han Fei's eyes, hundreds of years had passed, and he had turned into a star. On the crossing, Han Fei said, "I'm getting off the ship. Xingliu, do you want to come with me?" Feng Xingliu said in surprise, "Why do you have to get off the ship?" Feng Qingsheng also said, "Brother Han Fei, the crossing goes straight to the divine capital dynasty. It's less than a year before the grand competition begins. It's exactly 8 months before the crossing arrives. There's no need to get off the ship now, right?" Han Fei said, "It's too comfortable and peaceful on the ship. I listen to stories, drink, eat, and sleep every day. What else can I do?" Feng Qingchang said, "Brother Han Fei, in fact, it's said that there's a lot of information hidden in the tavern. If you pay attention to it carefully, you'll find a lot of stories and information about the 4 divine provinces, mysterious treasures, and secret realms." Feng Xingliu nodded quickly. He didn't have to fight on the crossing, and he could listen to stories. He wished he could stay in the legendary tavern every day. Han Fei pondered for a moment. "Feng, you should have arrived, right?" Feng Qingshang said, "My sister sent a message. She's in the sea outside the divine capital dynasty, but she doesn't know where the crossing is, so she didn't find us. Anyway, we're going there anyway, so she might as well play by herself outside." Han Fei thought to himself, "Feng Yu is also belligerent. I wonder if she's looking for someone to fight." However, if what the old storyteller said was true, and Feng Yu was the top expert on the heaven roll, who could be her opponent now? She didn't have to participate in the grand competition of the East Ocean at all. Han Fei said, "Okay, I'll get off the boat. You guys stay on the boat. Let's meet again in 8 months." Feng Xingliu was taken aback. "No, we came together. Let's go together. But why are we going to the wilderness?" Han Fei said, "To rob qualification tokens." Feng Qingsheng had never seen anyone so keen on robbing. "You've robbed a lot of resources on your way here. Why do you still want to rob?" Could it be that he was just enjoying the robbery itself? But she didn't know that Han Fei's resources were almost used up. Not to mention Feng Qingsheng, even the South Arch didn't expect it. More than 7 months later, in the wilderness outside the divine capital dynasty, 3 people were running amok in the wilderness. A team of 5 people was lying flat on the sea at the moment, because the qualification tokens they had collected over the years were all robbed by the team of 3 in front of them. In the team of 3, Feng Xingliu pointed a spear at them and said, "5 people, a total of 42 tokens. Alas, I really don't know what to say to you. If you give it to me, I can get 420 tokens." The 5 people were speechless. "The point is, we're not you. And 420 tokens? Do you think the participants of the 10,000-year grand competition are all fools? You think you can snatch it just because you say so? They can't beat you, but they can run away." In the team, Han Fei said, "Hey, you guys, we're not bloodthirsty people. Hand over all your resources and we'll leave. Don't lie to me. I hate being lied to. Give me as much as you have." After a while, Han Fei glanced at the resources of the 5 people, which added up to less than 200,000 kilometers, and sighed. These robbers were all smart. They came out to hunt with pitifully few resources, which were probably all robbed. Then, Han Fei pointed at a bearded man and said, "Poke him." "Don't," the bearded man frowned. Did this person really know that he had hidden resources? But he didn't have time to think too much. A fiery spear with a vortex burst out at the tip, and the bearded man was directly smashed by the spear vortex. This wasn't Feng Xingliu's own move, and Han Fei didn't need to ask, because he had heard it from stories. In the past few months, Feng Xingliu had demonstrated the great techniques, and moves he had heard from stories for the first time. Maybe they weren't originally like that, but after hearing the stories, Feng Xingliu felt that it should be, so he created a new technique spontaneously. This was the most talented thing about Feng Xingliu that Han Fei had seen so far. He could create great techniques based on other people's stories and his own imagination. Even Zhang Xuanyu couldn't do that. Therefore, it was hard to tell whether Feng Xingliu was a genius or a fool. When he was a genius, He was also inhumanly talented. When he was stupid, even a sea pig would be defeated. When the bearded man was reborn, Feng Xing Lu bellowed, "Aunt, there won't be a second time." The bearded man hurried to take out the last of his resources. Although it was painful, his life was much more important than resources. After taking out all the resources, Feng Xing Lu waved his hand. "Let's go. Go rob someone else." The bearded man and the others. After a moment, Han Fei suddenly said, "Hey, we seem to have arrived at the divine capital dynasty." A moment later, when Han Fei saw a city on the sea millions of kilometers away, the three of them stood in the void quietly. Feng Qingshang said, "That's definitely not the divine capital dynasty. It's the watchtower on the sea of the divine capital dynasty. There should be many watchtowers like this." Seeing this means that we're about to enter the safe area of the divine capital dynasty. In the safe area, we can't fight or even attack the ordinary creatures in the sea, because they can't withstand the power of the heaven-opening realm or even the pioneer sea realm. A watchtower? Han Fei thought it was an offshore facility of the divine capital dynasty, but it turned out to be just a watchtower. Each watchtower was an island on the sea. It was almost 100 kilometers wide, like a small city, and there were many people on it. As for the watchtower, there seemed to be a tower that was thousands of meters tall. Feng Qingsheng explained, "The watchtower is also a small town. After all, there are not only strong people in this world, but also ordinary people. There are also many law enforcers, explorers, and venerables. This is their battlefield, not ours. So, our robbery trip is over." Chapter 23:20. 10 days later. From the time they found the first watchtower to the time they came to the divine capital dynasty, the total distance was 10 light days, which meant 10 days of walking at the speed of light. This was the first time they had seen the true face of the divine capital dynasty. At this moment, the three of them stood at an entrance outside the divine capital dynasty, looking at the city in amazement. Han Fei had always thought that a city should look like a city, with many houses lined up and roads crisscrossing. But the city in front of them was too sci-fi. Han Fei had been surprised many times along the way, but now he still couldn't help but sigh. The divine capital dynasty, a city that looked very sci-fi. 3,000 kilometers down to the bottom of the sea, 6,000 kilometers up to the sky, and 12 million kilometers around. There were 4,900 islands on the sea surface. It formed a super giant city with an underwater city, a land city, and a sky city. The main color of the underwater city was ice blue, which was a kind of building or called blue brick. It was extremely malleable and had both toughness and hardness, which made it an excellent building material. Besides, the underwater city needed light, so the buildings made of blue bricks were all planted with light algae, creating a huge, dreamy underwater city. The city on the land was like a normal human city. Because the land area was relatively small, those who could live on the land could barely be regarded as the middle class of the divine capital dynasty. But this didn't mean that there was only land on the sea. In fact, the 6,000-kilometer high city in the sky above the sea was connected from the inside to the outside, with crisscrossing roads and many layers of man-made land. At the top was the Divine Palace, guarded by 12 emperors. The most important thing was that this 9,000-li-tall city above the sea could rotate. It rotated at a speed of 1 revolution a month, 12 revolutions a year. The entire divine capital dynasty, except for the entrance, was enveloped by an invisible barrier. To be able to lay down such a huge barrier, how could an ordinary person be able to do it? Feng Qingsheng exclaimed, "Wow, is this the divine capital dynasty? It's so spectacular." Feng Xingliu said, "It's so big. It must be very complicated. Then where should we go after we get in?" Han Fei said, "Look, inside the entrance, there are a lot of people waiting there. They must be selling maps. Let's go. Since we're already here, why are we still standing outside and marveling?" The entrances of the divine capital dynasty were all on the land and islands, with a total of more than 700 entrances. The entrance they were at was the 203rd entrance. In fact, many of the people entering and exiting the divine capital dynasty were not here, to participate in the grand tournament. Most of them were natives of the divine capital dynasty. There was actually an ice blue crystal embedded in their arms, so they only needed to display it before entering the city gates. There was no need to go through an inspection, and there were not many people who walked into the city from outside the city. There were only the three of them and no one else. Maybe it was because they didn't encounter anyone else entering the city at this time. Anyway, when they came to the entrance of city gate number 203, someone seemed to have discovered them, and a heaven-opening state powerhouse walked out from behind the gate. This person hadn't turned into a star, but Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. More than 700 entrances to the divine capital dynasty. If every entrance was guarded by a heaven-opening expert, it would mean that there would be more than 700 heaven-opening experts guarding the Shun Du dynasty's entrance. Regardless of whether they had transformed into stars or not, there were too many heaven-opening realm cultivators. This wasn't something a place like Scavenger City could compare to. The man walked to the door, looked at the three of them, and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Contestants, please show me your qualification token. If you don't have it, you need to register and we will issue you an identity card." The three of them rolled up their sleeves, and the qualification token on their wrists flashed. Each of them had a ring. This meant that each of them had more than one qualification token. "Master," the heaven-opening expert who was guarding the door nodded slightly. "Please enter. There are some basic rules that I need to tell you. In the divine capital dynasty, you can't go anywhere within the top 1,000 kilometers. In addition, no private fights are allowed in the city. Once you fight outside, all damages must be paid high compensation. If you need to fight, you can go to the arena, the divine capital battlefield, etc., and you need to register. My suggestion is that you can find a guide after entering the city, pay a certain fee, and you can get a comprehensive understanding of the divine capital dynasty. The guide can take you to the residential area of the corresponding level." Han Fei smiled slightly. "Thank you for telling me." When the three of them entered the door, the heaven-opening state guard calculated in his heart and soon came up with an answer. Han Fei of the Fighting Sky Clan, Feng Xingliu of the Phoenix Divine Clan, and Little Princess Feng Qinsheng are all big shots. In the city, 7 or 8 guides were already ready to go. These people who came to participate in the 10,000-year competition were all local tycoons. Although most of them had a bad temper, they could make a profit. It wasn't easy for Chan Yi to get a spot as a tour guide. It was only because he had 2 younger siblings at home and his dead father had contributed a lot in the sinkhole world that he was able to get this position. In the past few years, he had received more than 30 contestants. Because he met a big customer once, he was rewarded with more than 50,000 kilometers of resources. It was said that some people were rewarded with tens of thousands of kilometers of resources because of their good explanations, and some people were directly rewarded with sea-quelling bizarre treasures. Of course, that was a bit exaggerated. It could only be found by chance, but one time as a guide, they could get at least thousands of kilometers of resources. This was the basic requirement of guides. The reason was that they couldn't let outsiders look down on the divine capital dynasty. Therefore, the fees couldn't be low to show the divine capital dynasty's level. When the 3 people outside the city entered through the gate, Chun Yi let out a howl and slapped a blue turtle he was sitting on and rushed to the front. The next moment, a seahorse tried to pass by him, but the turtle suddenly stretched out its leg and kicked the seahorse in the face, sending it flying. A sea dragon had already passed by him, but the turtle stretched out its head and bit the sea dragon's butt. "Huh!" Someone shouted. "Chun Yi, you brat, you have no morals." Chun Yi said, "I didn't hit you. It's just a mutual affection between mouths." Behind him, a young man came riding a crab. Seeing the crab's claws, Chun Yi immediately patted the blue turtle's shell and said, "Little green, let him go." Pooh! Seeing this tortoise, an earth-shaking sound actually erupted from its butt, releasing a large amount of turbid, ink-like fog, blinding the vision of the person behind it. As soon as the 3 of them entered the inner city, they saw a group of people riding glowing fish, seahorses, sea dragons, crabs, and turtles. They immediately rushed at them. Then, they saw that these people were actually fighting with each other. The green-headed turtle and the young man on the turtle shell, one man and one turtle, were using all sorts of unscrupulous methods to defeat each and every one of their opponents. Feng Xingliu was speechless. Ah, this Feng Qingxing opened her mouth. This guy is too despicable, isn't he? I definitely won't choose. Before Feng Qingxing finished, Han Fei chuckled. You will definitely choose him as your guide. Feng Qingxing looked at Han Fei in confusion. Why? Han Fei said, first of all, they didn't rush at us until the moment we came in, which means that they have an agreement and we can't choose freely. Second, although this young man has a lot of means, it also proves that he is smart. As long as he achieves his goal, the process is not important, which means he is very good. Feng Qingsheng asked, but shouldn't we choose the guide ourselves? Han Fei said, look at these young men. They are very wild, and their strength is between the peak of the explorer level and the semi-venerable level, which shows that they are very talented. Just now, the heaven-opening state powerhouse greeted them not only to attract business, but also to help them grow in another way. At this critical moment, what they need is some resources, perception, and combat experience. Since they can be guides here, it means that they are not short of anything else. All they need is resources, and they can smoothly advance. Feng Qingshang said, but the resources needed to advance from the semi-venerable level to the venerable level are very few. Han Fei said, if this position is specially set up, they must pay taxes. In addition to paying taxes, they may have many other purposes besides leaving their own cultivation resources. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing just 7 or 8 people, but hundreds or even thousands of people fighting to be our guides. The Divine Capital Dynasty certainly won't mess around during the 100,000-year competition, so those who can be guides must be carefully selected. Among these carefully selected people, don't you think it's a good idea to compete for the position and to compete for the position of the guide? Feng Qingshang couldn't help but look at Han Fei in astonishment. Brother Han Fei, you seem to know their living conditions very well. You talk as if you live here. Feng Xingliu also nodded. Yes, I didn't think that much. I thought it was just a few guides. Han Fei said with a smile. Did you forget what I told you? I cultivated step by step. At every stage of cultivation, I experienced life and death. I lived and fought with all my might. That's how I got to where I am today. Feng Qingsheng was deep in thought. Even Feng Xingliu couldn't help but admire him from the bottom of his heart. A moment later, when a young man on the tortoise rushed to Han Fei and the others, the guides behind him all stopped chasing with bitter faces. They wouldn't compete with Chunyi for this opportunity. Chunyi rushed to the front of Han Fei and the others, slightly nervous. He was afraid that the people in front of him would look back and choose one of them. Faced with such a situation, he couldn't explain the reason to them. Greetings, my lords. I'm Chunyi. I know the Divine Capital Dynasty very well. I know everything you want to know, as long as it doesn't involve my secrets. Han Fei asked, how much do you charge to be a guide? Chunyi hurriedly said, my lord, we charge a fixed price of resources within 1,000 kilometers. If you want to go to different places and need other guides, you may have to pay another person's resources. But if you want to go together, you only need to pay 1,000 kilometers of resources. I can explain to you for 10 days. Han Fei slightly nodded and threw a star shell to him. Me, then you. Chapter 23-21. Speaking of which, although Han Fei had several things to do in the Divine Capital Dynasty, such as meeting his friend's friend, however, these were not as important as one thing, which was to sell the qualification token. Han Fei's first question was, Chunyi, right? Do you know where those who had their qualification tokens robbed and had to enter the Divine Capital Dynasty live? Feng Qingxing and Feng Xingliu immediately understood what Han Fei meant. This guy was going to sell the qualification token. Ever since they got off the Traverser, Han Fei had already expressed their purpose of getting off the ship. That was to rob the qualification token and sell it in the Divine Capital Dynasty. Han Fei fooled them by saying that they could find opponents to gain experience and earn resources. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone, why not? This sounded very reasonable. Except that it was a little offensive, it sounded really good. Chinyi froze for a moment. He was ready to deal with all the questions, but he didn't expect Han Fei to ask this. It had to be said that the bad-tempered group of people who came to participate in this competition were those who had their qualification tokens robbed. Most people, when their qualification tokens were robbed, would take advantage of the 15 days after their qualification tokens were robbed to snatch them back. Because during these 15 days, they were still in a safe period and the heaven-opening state powerhouses couldn't attack them. However, either they couldn't reach the divine capital dynasty within 15 days, or after they snatched it, it was robbed by others. Anyway, the competition between the strong was full of ups and downs. Later, many people waited in the non-safe area outside the watchtower for an opportunity. As for whether they waited for an opportunity or not, anyway, for a period of time, there would be a period of time when more seriously injured experts would enter the divine capital dynasty every day. Obviously, these people were defeated. Their qualification tokens were robbed, and they couldn't fight anymore. In desperation, they could only choose to enter the city, because they heard that someone in the city would sell qualification tokens to the outside world. This point, many people could think of, because one person only needed one qualification badge. So what was the point of fighting for more? Therefore, taking out the qualification badges to sell was a way for many people to make money. Chinyi froze for a moment and then reacted. Senior, are you going to sell qualification tokens? Feng Xingliu was taken aback and couldn't help but say, "Oh, you're quite smart." Han Fei was intrigued. "Oh, how did you know?" Chinyi said, "There are too many people who came to the divine capital dynasty to participate in the tournament of 10,000 years. Many of them did not get the qualification token and even suffered heavy injuries. These people should not be acquainted with seniors. So, if seniors want to find them, you can only sell the qualification medallion." Feng Qingchang said indifferently, "You're quite smart." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "Do you know the price of the qualification token in the divine capital dynasty?" Chinyi nodded. "In theory, the selling price of the qualification badges will become more and more expensive as time goes on. It will reach its peak on the eve of the tournament of 10,000 years. However, this peak was not very high, because in the past, only Sea Expansion Realm cultivators participated in the great competition. There had never been a single person who was qualified to obtain resources exceeding 20,000 kilometers. However, this is the 100,000-year competition, and there are heaven-opening realm cultivators participating, so the price limit will definitely be higher. However, a single qualification token shouldn't be able to exceed 100,000 kilometers of resources. Why? Chinyi. Because those who lose their qualification tokens either lose their lives or escape with injuries. They may have resources on them, but they first have to reserve resources for their own consumption, and for the normal use in the Divine Capital Dynasty, they also have to reserve resources to buy qualification tokens. Anyway, the consumption is actually not small. Moreover, there are many people who snatch qualification tokens in the wilderness. Qualification tokens are concentrated in the hands of the strong, and these people also want to sell them, so there are actually a lot of qualification tokens for sale. I don't recommend seniors to go to those people in person to sell them, because it will waste time, and you may not be able to sell them for a good price. Han Fei, go on. If you have a better way, I won't hesitate to give you some money. That may be a good harvest for you. Chinyi's eyes suddenly lit up. Seniors, how much can you give me? Feng Xingliu frowned. Kid, are you starting to talk about conditions now? Han Fei interrupted him. Chinyi, how much income have you earned since you became guide? Chinyi knew that he couldn't lie in front of Han Fei and the others, so he said without hesitation, my income is ordinary. I received a total of 39 participants and earned 42,000 kilometers of resources. 90% of the resources came from a master in the heaven-opening state, because I found a material to repair a divine weapon for him. Han Fei and the others all confirmed Chunye's words. Then Han Fei smiled slightly. If you want to know how much we can give, it depends on the channels you can find. For example, how much is a qualification token of the heaven-opening state worth? I can give you one. Chinyi was shocked when he heard this. A qualification token of the heaven-opening state. no matter how bad it was, might be comparable to all his income so far. Its value was definitely above 40,000 kilometers of resources. However, Han Fei continued, "Kid, your combat skills are good, your reaction is fast, and your comprehension should be good. If you perform well in this guide task, I can consider rewarding you with a body refining technique that can help you improve your strength by at least 50%. Hiss, gulp, Chinye's heart thumped. He knew that an opportunity had come. He knew that with so many people participating in the competition and so many strong people, he would definitely have a chance to encounter an opportunity. As a cultivator, his greatest wish was not only to harvest resources, but also to encounter opportunities. The body refining technique was exactly what he needed. Although the body refining technique consumed a lot of resources, Han Fei also promised to give him a qualification token of the heaven opening state, which meant that he would have at least 40,000 to 50,000 kilometers of resources. For the heaven opening state, these resources were naturally not much, but he was only a peak-level explorer. He was still one step away from becoming a semi-venerable. How could he need so many resources? Weren't these all to pave the way for his younger brothers and sisters to cultivate and improve his sister's spiritual heritage? But if he became stronger, maybe his fate would change. Chinny tried to suppress his inner excitement and immediately said, "Seniors, please give me one day. Tomorrow I will find the most suitable seller for you. Today, I will explain some basic knowledge about the divine capital dynasty and the tournament of 10,000 years." At this moment, Chinny didn't know that whether it was Han Fei, Feng Qingcheng, or even Feng Xingliu, they all nodded slightly. A peak-level explorer, in the face of such a huge temptation, was still able to calm down and explain to them. This kind of determination was enough to prove his excellence. Feng Qingcheng couldn't help but look at Han Fei, thinking that Brother Han Fei was indeed a man who climbed up step by step. His eyes were quite sharp. Half a day later, Chunyi took Han Fei and the others to the area between 6,000 and 7,000 kilometers above the sea level of the divine capital dynasty. Chunyi said, "Master Han Fei, this is the temporary residence of the strong people participating in the competition. The area between 6,000 and 800 kilometers is the temporary residence of the sea opening state powerhouses. The area between 6,800 and 7,000 kilometers is the temporary residence of the heaven-opening state powerhouses. Because the number of strong people participating in the competition is more than any other time in history, and this area is temporarily vacated. It is said that more than 8 million people have moved in, including more than 600,000 heaven-opening state powerhouses." Shoot, hearing Chun Ye's introduction, although Han Fei didn't say anything, he felt that countless iron-head fish were running wildly in his heart. There were still 2 months until the tournament of 10,000 years. When the competition started, the number of sea-opening state powerhouses might reach 10 million, and the number of heaven-opening state powerhouses might reach 1 million. What kind of number was that? The divine capital dynasty made Han Fei realize for the first time how terrifying it was. A heaven-opening state powerhouse might be at the peak of a starting ground. Because of this competition, 600,000 people had come, and they were carefully selected from the entire East Ocean Divine Land. Han Fei didn't know how many people would participate in the competition. Feng Qingcheng exclaimed, "So many! This is much more than the trial of the Middle Sea Divine Land." Han Fei shrugged. They are not on the same level. Han Fei and the others had to register their arrival. They went to register Feng Qingcheng first, because they were not on the same level. After Feng Qingcheng registered, Han Fei and Feng Xingliu went to the registration office for the heaven-opening state powerhouses. At an altitude of 7,000 kilometers, when Han Fei and the others appeared, there were only a dozen people at the registration office. Chen Yi said, "Because many people have already registered, but there are still about 1,000 people registering every day. Very soon, they will only make simple records and will not make special distinctions in the early stage." Han Fei understood. No matter what competition it was, the first step must be to register people. So, except for the Sky Garden Square, it was a bit like a floating island but with richer sceneries. Spiritual fruits were more like decorations here. Behind the square was a rotating statue of a person with an incomplete body. Han Fei didn't know who it was. Chen Yi said, "That's a stargazing statue. It's said to be the remains of a strong person from the divine capital dynasty who died in battle." Han Fei nodded slightly. When it was his turn, one of the two people in charge of registration was definitely at the late stage of the star transformation realm, and the other was only at the star transformation realm. The woman from the star transformation realm was emotionless like a robot. Name, realm, origin, and a qualification token. Han Fei, star transformation realm, independent cultivator. Huh. Suddenly, the woman couldn't help but look up at Han Fei. Even the strong person who was resting with his eyes closed opened his eyes. Chapter 23-22. For the powerhouses of the Divine Capital Dynasty. There were too many heaven-opening stage powerhouses, and not everyone was worth remembering. However, the name Han Fei had inadvertently spread among some people. Challenging the heavenly race, robbing the heavenly race, suppressing 4 heavenly talents alone. This matter was too famous, and the heavenly race couldn't hide it. Although the matter of Han Fei suppressing Yichan was covered up by the heavenly race, the fact that the heavenly race lost a late-stage, star transformation stage powerhouse couldn't be hidden, because the crossing happened to pass by at that time, and it was hard not to know that a late-stage, star transformation stage powerhouse died. Perhaps in the East Sea Divine Continent, the heaven-opening stage was nothing, but the number of people who could reach the late-stage star transformation stage was less than 80%. And a late-stage star transformation stage powerhouse born in the heavenly race couldn't be compared to an ordinary late-stage star transformation stage powerhouse. Therefore, when Han Fei said his name, the two registrars couldn't help but look at Han Fei. The powerhouse next to him, who was resting with his eyes closed, said, "High-quality cultivation area, 8306. The registrar nodded slightly, stretched out his hand, and engraved the number 306 on the qualification token given by Han Fei with a special technique. Then, the qualification token changed again. It turned into a halo, put on Han Fei's right hand, and melted into his skin. The main reason was that Han Fei's left hand was full of qualification tokens, and there was no place to put them, so the halo appeared on his right hand. The registrar said, "During the competition, with this qualification token, you can go in and out of any place in the Divine Capital Dynasty. When the competition officially begins, after you are defeated, the mark will disappear and automatically dissipate. But the house you are assigned now can stay until the end of the competition, and the losers can also participate in the competition." The registrar briefly explained the authority of the qualification token, and Han Fei nodded slightly. It seemed that the Divine Capital Dynasty was quite generous. As long as you came, you could live in a house assigned to you until the end of the competition. Even if you were defeated, you could still watch the competition as usual. Speaking of which, even if it was just to watch the competition, many people wouldn't give up the qualification token, because being able to witness such a grand scene that lasted for 100,000 years represented incomparable luck. Normally, how many powerhouses could you see fighting each other? But in the 100,000 years competition, you could watch all the time until your scalp was numb and your eyes were dazzled. It was very beneficial for cultivators to observe the battles of others and verify their own Tao. If some of the more talented ones were able to watch the entire 100,000-year competition, their strength would definitely increase, and some could even break through to the next realm. Half Monarch Sea opening, Heaven opening. This time, there might even be someone who could open the Heaven opening Tao. According to the scale of the Divine Capital Dynasty's 100,000-year grand competition, even a number of Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators participating had reached 10 million. Only the heavens knew how many venerable realm cultivators there would be. In a place like the Divine Capital Dynasty, there were simply too many exalted realm experts to be counted. Just by looking at the numbers, one could tell the level of participation in the 100,000-year competition. Han Fei was thinking about the grand occasion of the 100,000-year competition, but Chen Yi, the guide, was shocked beyond words. Number A306? What kind of ranking was this? These guides were all trained, and they had made an exception to visit a huge city between 6,000 and 7,000 miles. Sky City protruded from the surface of the ocean. It was 9,000 kilometers tall and 30,000 kilometers wide. There were 108 such sky cities in the divine capital dynasty. The one they were in was especially prepared for the contestants. The so-called upper rank cultivation area was the upper rank cultivation area that was above 6,800 miles. Number A was basically equivalent to the combat power ranking of the heaven opening state, and it lived in the area closest to 7,000 kilometers. Therefore, the way Chunyi looked at Han Fei changed. Hundreds of thousands of heaven opening state cultivators, and this person was ranked 306. This was a super strong master. Chunye's strength was too low to feel it. He only felt that these strong masters were like ordinary people. He brought Han Fei and the others here to register first because he wanted to see their numbers. According to the number, he would decide whether he should go all out to help Han Fei find a buyer for the qualification token. In such a large divine capital dynasty, it was not easy to find one. Most people who were not from the divine capital dynasty, even if they were strong, would definitely be cheated in other people's territory. Now, Chunye's heart was surging. If such a super strong master could really reward him with a body refining technique, it would be extraordinary. In the divine capital dynasty, body refining techniques were not expensive and could even be said to be very cheap. However, body refining techniques were also divided into grades. There were too many body refining techniques that could be found on the market, and if one practiced them randomly, it would be easy to go astray. And body refining techniques, generally, only those above high quality were qualified to be called great techniques. Great techniques were divided into 3 grades: high quality, ultra quality, and very rare divine quality. High quality great techniques were relatively cheap and could be obtained with hundreds of millions of ultra quality spirit stones. He had already broken away from the scope of ordinary body refining techniques, and the ultra quality were the secrets of many sections. No matter what technique was of the ultra quality, it was not something that one could learn easily. As for divine quality, Chunyi had only heard of it so far. Legend had it that only the royal family and some big forces of the divine EC had such great techniques. Chunyi did not expect Han Fei to be able to reward him with a divine quality technique, but he thought that if Han Fei was ranked 306, if he was really rewarded, it might be an ultra quality technique. Even if it was not an ultra quality technique, but a high quality one, it was still not something that could be obtained easily, right? At that time, a great technique could be used by 4 people in a family, and maybe it could be exchanged for a good price, so this time it would definitely be a big profit. Chunyi was very smart. If Han Fei knew, he might even praise him, because if Han Fei was in the same situation, he would also make the same choice. Shrewdness was never a mistake. Feng Xingliu, on the other hand, gave Han Fei a weird look. When did you turn into a star? Didn't you just start to turn into a star? But it didn't matter. He was turning into a star, but he was still a star. At this time, Feng Xingliu hurriedly said, "I'm Feng Xingliu, a star cultivator, an independent cultivator." However, this time, the strong man who was resting with his eyes closed said with a hint of mockery, "Feng Xingliu, a star cultivator, Phoenix Divine Clan. High-quality cultivation area, number 3907A. Han Fei patted Feng Xingliu's shoulder, thinking, "Stop acting. You'll reveal everything when you fight. You're different from me." The reason why Han Fei could fool them as an independent cultivator was that even the people of the Divine Capital Dynasty didn't know Han Fei's background. By the way, the Heavenly Clan and Han Fei had fought many times, but none of them found out. How could they know? However, it was hard for them not to know Feng Xingliu. But Feng Xingliu argued, "Why is my brother number 300, but I'm almost number 4,000? The registrar said, "You can live with Mr. Han Fei." Feng Xingliu was taken aback. What the registrar said made sense, and he immediately forgot why he asked the question. After the registration, Chunyi took them to number 306A. It was a large courtyard at the outermost edge of the rotating Sky City, covering an area of 10 square kilometers. There were flowers, trees, birds, ponds, rockeries, corridors by the lake, and small buildings with flying eaves. There were also special training rooms. The spiritual energy here was dozens of times denser than in the outside world. It was elegant and refined. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. This was really a good choice for a vacation. Feng Xingliu didn't feel much about it. He looked around and shook his head. It's too bland. Feng Qingchang said, "This is elegance." Feng Xingliu said, "Our flowing fire waterfall and flying fire forest are not bad either." Feng Qingchang said, "This is the divine capital dynasty. Every place has its own characteristics." Han Fei and the other two scanned the place with their perception and then stood at the edge of the courtyard, looking out. The clouds were floating in their eyes, and it was empty everywhere. It seemed that most people wouldn't come to such a high place. Occasionally, dragons and snakes would soar into the sky and fly higher. Those were people who lived above 7,000 miles. There shouldn't be many of them. After all, ordinary people couldn't enter above 8,000 miles. Chen Yi sighed in his heart. This kind of courtyard might only be suitable for super powerhouses like Han Fei and the others. If he stayed there, he was confident in his ability to break through into the Exalt realm if he stayed in this courtyard for 3 to 5 years. If my younger sister were to stay here for a few years, the essence of the earth vein here will be able to subtly raise my younger sister's spirit vein. Even now, Chen Yi was still controlling his breathing, making sure that his breaths were long and drawn out, as though he was taking in as much air as he could. All of a sudden, Feng Xingliu said, "Kid, it's useless for you to take a few breaths. This is not the right way to cultivate." Feng Xingliu didn't mean to look down on Chen Yi. Han Fei added, "He's right. It's indeed useless, and it may disturb the balance of your body's absorption of spiritual energy. In the future, when he came to such places, there was no need to deliberately act normal. When you reach the advanced Exalt realm, you can stay in such places for a long time." Hearing this, Chen Yi hurriedly stopped his stupid behavior. Fortunately, he was reminded by a strong master. He really didn't know the disadvantages of absorbing spiritual energy. Han Fei said, "Okay, go ahead. When you find a buyer for the qualification token, come here to find me." "Yes, Master Han Fei." One day later, because there was no guide, Han Fei and the others didn't bother to study the Divine Capital Dynasty. Feng Xingliu ate barbecue here for a long time, and Feng Qingsheng went to find some books about the Divine Capital Dynasty to read. Han Fei closed his eyes and rested for a day. He was observing the situation of his natal star. The god of war said that he wanted to create an earth vein and a star core. But after he turned into a star, he always felt that it was too early to create an earth vein, because he was on the path of returning to origin. In theory, he could make his natal star stronger and continue to improve his comprehensive strength through the method of returning to origin. As for Guiyuan, could he have given the earth vein to Guiyuan too? It didn't seem impossible to keep the earth vein and return to origin, but he had to find a way to get a batch of resources and then experiment. As long as the earth vein was still there after returning to origin, these two things wouldn't conflict. "Master Han Fei, Master Xingliu, Master Qingsheng, I found a shop to buy the qualification token. It's the most trustworthy one among the 103 shops I've searched." Chapter 23:23. "Oh, so punctual?" Even Han Fei was a little surprised. He thought that Chen Yi could find a buyer in a day, given the size of the Divine Capital Dynasty. He didn't expect Chen Yi to say that it was the most trustworthy shop. Immediately, Han Fei got up. "I'm Feng Xingliu. Here comes a business." Han Fei looked at Chen Yi and asked, "Who is the buyer?" Chen Yi replied, "My lord, this is the main shop of my father's comrade-in-arms. My father saved his life when he was still alive. After pulling some strings, he got the highest possible price." Feng Xingliu couldn't help asking, "What's the highest price?" Chen Yi replied, "The qualification token of the Pioneer Sea Realm, 18,000 kilometers of resources per token. The qualification token of the Pioneer Sea Realm, 57,000 kilometers of resources per token." Han Fei calculated in his heart. This price was higher than he thought, because countless people who came to participate in the 10,000-year competition died on the way. Some of them perished in the wilderness. To begin with, crossing the wilderness was not an easy task. Being able to cross the wilderness was a kind of experience in itself. Secondly, within 3 light years from the divine capital dynasty, this place was a large hunting ground, although only people in the same realm were allowed to compete and kill each other. But they didn't know that there were strong and weak people in the same realm. The fights between people in the same realm were often very fierce. Therefore, the number of qualification tokens distributed must be more than the actual number of participants. This also meant that some of the qualification tokens were redundant. Han Fei couldn't help but ask curiously, "Chen Yi, where will the extra qualification tokens go?" Chen Yi replied without hesitation, "My lord, they will fall into the hands of the local residents of the divine capital dynasty. Because if you want to watch the whole 10,000-year competition, you need the qualification token. Many people actually don't have this qualification, so they can only use the qualification token." Feng Xingliu couldn't help asking, "Then they can't participate in the competition after using the qualification token?" Chen Yi shook his head. "Master Xingliu, there will inevitably be a lot of people who quit during the competition. They're not interested in the competition itself. They just want to watch the competition. So, even if they have to participate, they must have given up." Han Fei immediately understood. No wonder the qualification token was still sold at such a high price when the number of participants was greatly reduced. It turned out that some people spent money to buy tickets. However, Han Fei and the others benefited from this. Perhaps this was one of the benefits of participating in the 10,000-year competition. It was just that not everyone could obtain this benefit. Feng Xingliu glanced at Han Fei in excitement. "If each of them can be sold for so much money, I'll be rich. I have 278 qualification tokens. That's over 900,000 kilometers worth of resources." Feng Xingliu was thrilled. Sure enough, Han Fei had made the right choice to bring him here. He didn't care about the resources themselves. What he cared about was that he could earn resources, and a huge amount of resources at that. Han Fei knew how Feng Xingliu felt. He would feel a great sense of accomplishment when he got the resources by working with his hands. When Chen Yi heard that Feng Xingliu had 278 qualification badges, his heart skipped a beat. This kind of big shot was indeed a divine range expert. However, he was not unresigned, nor did he feel that he was in the wrong for only receiving a heaven-opening qualification token as a reward. Wasn't this the so-called fortuitous encounter? A true powerhouse could casually slip through the cracks of their fingers, and it was something that they could not obtain even after painstakingly pursuing. He was already very lucky to pick up this rare opportunity. An hour later, Chen Yi took the 3 of them to the sky above the land cities of the divine capital dynasty and introduced them to them. From the customs to the trial grounds within the divine capital dynasty, the awakening pool, the resource trade, the battlefield of the strong, and so on, he introduced them to many aspects. Because Chen Yi knew these things very well, Han Fei and the others didn't feel bored on the way. Of course, it was mainly because Feng Xingliu had a lot of questions. At this moment, he was still chattering. Feng Xingliu asked, "Yi, what's this round green ball?" Chen Yi said, "Master Xingliu, that's a spiky ball demon. It's spherical in shape and covered with long thorns. These thorns are of different quality. Any one of them can be used as a weapon. If people go to the spiky ball demon and offer resources, they can have a chance to pull out a thorn. But it's hard to say whether the thorns are of good quality or not." Feng Xingliu nodded and asked again, "How many species are there in the divine capital dynasty? It's not hot here, but I saw a lot of seductresses on the way. They were wearing revealing clothes and tried to seduce me." Smack! Han Fei immediately slapped him. "Hey, those are the clam girls and mermaids in the undersea city. The living habits on the ground are different. Who would seduce you for no reason?" Feng Xingliu asked. "Then why do I feel a little restless?" Feng Qingcheng couldn't bear it anymore. "Shut up. Don't talk." Feng Xingliu snorted inwardly. After a while, he suddenly said, "Yi, why do you have to ride a sea creature when you travel? Is it your original spirit?" Chen Yi said, "Master Xing Lu, Little Green is not my companion spirit, but our relationship is no worse than my companion spirit. That's because the Divine Capital Dynasty advocates interracial cooperation. Firstly, it's to prevent creatures like us from having too many children because we have nothing to do. Secondly, it's to make progress together and promote our growth. Thirdly, it's convenient." Han Fei thought to himself, "It's just like buying a car. Having a car is more comfortable than running around on foot." Soon, while Fengxing Lu was talking, Han Fei and the others came to a place where resources were sold that covered an area of thousands of square kilometers in a land city. This shop was called the Zhao Family Resource Trading Center. It was obvious that this was a family business. It occupied such a large area, and there were many people queuing up here to exchange or sell resources. Han Fei knew that it couldn't be a simple force that could afford to buy so many qualification tokens. As soon as the three of them arrived, a powerhouse at the peak level of the Pioneer Sea State flew over. When this person saw Han Fei and the others, he quickly cupped his hands to them. "I'm Zhao Chong. Nice to meet you, masters." Chen Yi hurriedly said, "Master Han Fei, Master Xing Lu. This is Uncle Zhao, who is also my father's comrade in arms. It was through Uncle Zhao's connections that I was able to get the best price." Zhao Chong said respectfully, "Masters, I am one of the stewards of the number 13 Zhao Family Resource Trading Center. I can guarantee that the price offered by the Zhao family is a full 10% higher than that of other resource trading centers. The Zhao family can rank in the top 10 in the entire Divine Capital Dynasty. You can rest assured." Han Fei nodded slightly. This Zhao Chong was at the peak level of the Pioneer Sea State and was one of the stewards of a large resource trading center. He was probably trying to help Han Fei out of their old friendship. Otherwise, the other party could simply charge the normal price. In any case, it didn't matter if the other party wanted to sell it or not. Such a superpower did not lack resources. Han Fei nodded. "Okay, then make the arrangements quickly." This kind of huge transaction was naturally handled by the steward himself, and Zhao Chong was just a middleman. And the steward of the resource trading center here seemed to have known about this long ago, so he led them to the Zhao family's house to talk. Seeing this steward, Han Fei nodded slightly. This person was at the late stage of the star transformation realm. Han Fei was not surprised that this person was in charge of such a large resource trading center. And those at the late stage of the star transformation realm would not care about this kind of thing. So this steward was only at the late stage of the star transformation realm, and it seemed that he had just reached the star transformation realm. "Three guests. I am Zhao Kai from the number 13 Trade Center. Zhao Chong has already reported the situation. It is said that you have a lot of qualification tokens. I wonder if you know the specific number?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "We have 362 Pioneer Sea qualification tokens and 569 Heaven Opening qualification tokens, which is quite a lot. With the Zhao family's wealth, it should not be a big problem to buy these qualification tokens." Zhao Kai's heart shook slightly. Although he knew that this was a big deal, he did not expect it to be so big. 569 Heaven Opening qualification tokens. To be able to grab so many qualification tokens, the other party's strength was evident. Zhao Kai laughed. "Of course, it's not a big problem. My Zhao family's price will be fair. Please wait a moment. I will go and get the resources." Just as Zhao Kai was entertaining Han Fei and the others, he suddenly saw a heaven-opening powerhouse flying over. This person was not from a number 13 trade center. He might be from the Zhao family. Zhao Kai couldn't help but frown, thinking that this person was here to snatch the deal. He immediately said, "Brother Chung, why are you here? I am making an appointment with a big client. Why don't you wait for me for a while, and I will have a drink with you later?" However, the person shook his head slightly, glanced at Han Fei and the others, and then directly transmitted his voice to them. Zhao Kai's face immediately changed, and he looked at Han Fei and the others in surprise. Han Fei and Feng Qinsheng felt that something was wrong. Han Fei said, "What happened?" "This," the person said, "Guests, I am afraid we can't do this business. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Are you going to use a few words to dismiss me? Han Fei's gaze landed on Zhao Cheng. What a terrifying gaze, he was almost stunned. Although he was angry, he did not dare to flare up because he knew who these people were. In any case, they were not people he could provoke. Zhao Kai hurriedly said, Your Excellency Han Fei, today's matter is the Zhao family's fault. But to be honest, someone from the Heaven Clan has issued a warning that anyone who dares to do business with you three will face the wrath of the Heaven Clan. I am afraid that no one in the Divine Capital Dynasty dares to do business with you three. Chapter 23-24. The ant-like Tian clan has gone too far. Fengxing Liu was still celebrating the fact that he was about to receive a large amount of resources, but when it was time to hand over the money, something unexpected happened. Feng Qingchang said, It seems that they can't threaten Brother Han Fei in the wilderness, so they have to suppress you in this way. Not far away, Chen Yi quietly looked at Zhao Cheng. Zhao Cheng's expression changed slightly. He looked at Chen Yi, whose face had turned pale, and shook his head slightly. This matter involved the celestial race. There was a reason for this, and even Fengxing Liu couldn't blame it on the Zhao family. After a few moments of silence, Han Fei said lightly, How big is the Tian clan's property in the Divine Capital Dynasty? Zhao Kai was startled. He thought to himself, Do you want to fight with the Tian clan in terms of background? But this wasn't a big problem, so Zhao Kai said, The celestial race is a large power. Basically, they will participate in all the people's livelihood and cultivation industries. For example, resource trading centers, weapon forging workshops, alchemy rooms. Han Fei turned around. Yes. All right, this matter has nothing to do with your Zhao clan. Since we can't do business, we won't stay for long. With that, Han Fei glanced at Chen Yi. Let's go. Chen Yi's heart skipped a beat. He was afraid. He didn't know if Han Fei would vent his anger on him. How could he have known that something like this would happen? He was still dumbfounded, not knowing why a super force like the Tian clan would attack Han Fei and the others. After Han Fei left, Zhao Cheng let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, I came in time, and the deal was not completed. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Zhao Kai slightly frowned. Is this Han Fei? Zhao Cheng. That's right. He heard that he killed a late-stage celestial transformation cultivator from the Tian clan and extorted a lot of resources from the Tian clan. Until now, no one knows his exact origins. They only know that the two beside him are the proud sons of the Divine Phoenix clan of the Southern Sea. Zhao Kai said, I heard that this person is incomparably ruthless. He dares to challenge the Celestials in the wilderness. It was a pity that he was not from the Divine Prefecture of the East Sea. It would be difficult for him to do anything in the Divine Capital Dynasty. But I reckon that the Tian clan's actions this time might set up a great enemy for them in the other divine provinces. Zhao Cheng, yeah, right? Just Fengxing Liu alone had been holding back his anger. It was said that the #1 expert on the heaven list, Feng Yu, had also come. #1 on the heaven list. The Phoenix divine race is not to be underestimated. I wonder if these two sides will meet in this 10,000-year competition. Han Fei was also furious. If he sold all the qualification tokens he had, he could also sell more than 900,000 kilometers worth of resources. In the end, because of a few words from the Tian clan, the qualification token in his hand couldn't be sold. How could he not be angry? Phoenix Starflow's anger came from being targeted. He had never been targeted like this before. Han Fei's anger was hatred. Cutting off his path to wealth was like killing his parents. How could Han Fei feel at ease if he didn't take revenge? However, Han Fei's top priority was to sell the qualification token. If this thing fell into his hands, it would be a waste of nearly 1,000,000 kilometers of resources. He had just achieved celestial transformation, and in the future, he might need a lot of resources, and this qualification token was a very generous amount of resources. Fengxing Liu cursed. No, I can't take this. Why get back to the South Sea Divine Prefecture? I will have my family suppress all the Sky Clan's forces there. Feng Qingchang said, If you suppress them, won't they suppress the Phoenix Divine race? You know, the Phoenix divine race also has some forces in the EC divine prefecture. Feng Xingliu said, but I can't let them bully me. I've never been so angry in my life. It's not easy for me to earn resources. If I bring them back, how glorious will it be? Just because of those ants of the Sky Clan, they cut off my path to wealth. Then, Feng Xingliu looked at Han Fei. What do you think? How about we fight the Sky Clan in the 10,000-year competition? Feng Xingliu was also very like a bandit now. This was all taught by Han Fei. If there was a first, there would be a second. Feng Xingliu had robbed so many times and killed more than once as well. Naturally, he grew up very quickly. Han Fei said lightly, "Don't panic. These big clans in the Divine Capital Dynasty are threatened by the Sky Clan. But don't forget, there are many people who came to the Divine Capital Dynasty to participate in the 10,000-year competition. There were a lot of people who had the money to buy the qualification token. As long as you find the right user group, you don't have to worry about not selling the qualification token. Besides, I don't believe that the Divine Capital Dynasty will be afraid of the Sky Clan." At this moment, Han Fei looked at Chun Yi, who hurriedly lowered his head and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Master Han Fei, Master Xingliu. I really didn't know." Han Fei said lightly, "It's not your fault. Feng Xingliu, and I won't blame you. Back to what I asked you the first time, do you know where those guys who were injured and deprived of their qualification tokens are?" Chun Yi hurriedly said, "Master Han Fei, those people are too scattered. However, because they don't have the qualification token, they can't live in rotating star city number 1, or they can only live within 3,000 kilometers. I can go to the major inns and ask them. Most likely, I can find a place where they are concentrated." Han Fei thought for a moment. "No, it's really troublesome to find them one by one. You may be familiar with the Divine Capital Dynasty, but you're just a peak-level explorer. It's hard for you to find out where the strong are staying with your strength and identity." Han Fei said, "Maybe we don't have to sell the qualification token to these big families. The Divine Capital Dynasty is a peerless dynasty above the divine land of the East Sea, and it has the Dongwu Great Emperor. The Heavenly Clan can threaten these big families, but can they threaten the royal family?" Feng Qingqing's eyes lit up. "Yes, the royal family is extremely powerful and can suppress the entire gate of heaven, if we can cooperate with them. But there's a problem. The Heavenly Clan has been in the divine land of the East Sea for many years. The royal family of the Divine Capital Dynasty doesn't have to offend the Heavenly Clan for this matter. And the Heavenly Clan may have a good relationship with the royal family of the Divine Capital Dynasty." Chun Yi was shocked. "Do they want to do business with the royal family?" Chun Yi said, "Well, Master Han Fei, the royal family of the Divine Capital Dynasty only collects taxes. They will not participate in the sale of qualification tokens." "Oh," Han Fei frowned slightly. If that was the case, did he have to go to the crossing? The crossing should be almost at the Divine Capital Dynasty now. However, if the South Arch helped him, he would owe her another favor. Although Han Fei felt that it was nothing to owe her a favor for nearly 1,000,000 kilometers of resources. But the price of a favor might not necessarily be the same in the future. Han Fei knew that he couldn't help the South Arch at all now. If the South Arch valued him, he would be happy to owe her another favor. But Han Fei was not used to it. He never liked to owe people favors. Besides, it was a favor owed to a venerable emperor, which was not a simple thing. Even if he had to owe someone, he couldn't owe someone like the South Arch. Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. "Damn, how could I forget the navigational globe?" Han Fei immediately said, "Chun Yi, give me a map of the Divine Capital Dynasty." Chun Yi was dumbfounded. What's the use? Feng Xingliu and Feng Qingqing didn't know what Han Fei was doing either. After a while, Han Fei took Chun Yi back to Residence A306. With a thought from Han Fei, a miniaturized map of the Divine Capital Dynasty appeared like a three-dimensional projection. Han Fei grabbed the navigational globe and stood in the projection. As the navigational globe rotated, he soon located a place. Feng Xingliu and Feng Qingqing's eyes widened. "That works?" Feng Xingliu sniffed. "Qingqing, can we also get a holy artifact like this? It's so powerful." Feng Qingshang said, "It's not something you can get." Chun Yu was even more dumbfounded. He didn't know what Han Fei was doing. At this time, Han Fei suddenly said, "Chun Yi, what is the Fighting Dragon Street?" Huh? Chun Yi froze for a moment and then hurriedly said, "Master Han Fei, the Fighting Dragon Street is not a place you can go casually." Han Fei said, "Tell me about it." Chun Yi was a little scared. "Master, almost all the rich kids of the Divine Capital Dynasty gather on the Fighting Dragon Street. The whole street is full of consumption. It's full of blood and violence. The most terrifying life and death ring of the Divine Capital Dynasty is there. Ordinary people can't even get in if they don't have a powerful background, or they can go in as gladiators." Feng Qingsheng frowned slightly. "There's such a place in the Divine Capital Dynasty?" Chen Yi nodded. "In the Fighting Dragon Street, everything is chaotic and disorderly. It's basically a lawless place. It's said that in the Divine Capital Dynasty, countless rich kids loafed around and later angered the great Dongwu Emperor. He ordered them to build a street called the Fighting Dragon Street. He said that those rich kids should die inside, and those who dare to do evil outside should be killed." Han Fei's eyes lit up. "Wow." Feng Xingliu was puzzled. "It sounds like my cousin Feng Yi, who has nothing better to do than fight all day long." Han Fei immediately grinned. "Good place. Chen Yi, take us there." Chen Yi panicked. "Well, Master Han Fei, that place is full of accidents." Han Fei said, "What can happen to you with me here? Don't worry, just lead the way."